Hello, puppies and kittens. We're having another discussion today with my guest, Natalia Reagan, stand-up comedian and primatologist, who's also done a couple of TV spots as a science communicator. We had an interesting conversation yesterday about Bigfoot and the whole cult of Bigfoot, shall we say? And one of the handful of topics that she wanted to discuss with me and with the live chat is well, I'm going to have her explain the anti-intellectualism. Natalia,
Hi.
describe your topic for the people here.
Well, it's something that funny enough, I actually covered this in 2016 right before Trump was elected, but this idea of anti-intellectualism, which seems so counterintuitive, productive, this sort of mistrust and disdain for intellect and intellectuals, whether it's those that are socially elite, those that might be the ruling class, or those that are intellectual elites, which I find to be a very kind of sort of an oxymoron in some ways, because as an academic who worked as a professor, we are definitely not in that sort of hierarchy of the social elite. We do not make that kind of money. You know, a lot of us are like check to check, barely getting by. But this sort of distrust and sort of, looking down upon those that have an education. And it's become a big problem in recent years, but it's not anything new. That's one of the things I want to talk about is a cyclical problem of this distrust and disdain for any sort of education and intellect, and how it's not a bad thing. And also talk about how intellect is not necessarily, it's not a monolith. There's different types of intellect. That there's even been attacks on IQ tests because a lot of times they're very, very biased and they don't really determine one's true intellect. And they've been used in the past to also sort of back up one's racist narrative. And so I think there's a lot to kind of unpack. And when I brought up this conversation piece to you, I thought to myself, "Oh God, this is a beast to cover," because there's just so much. So I would love to see kind of where your listeners and viewers might want to take it, if they have anything that they want to add to the conversation, or they're like, "Oh, I would really like to talk more about pseudoscience and how that is a big problem," or perhaps it's more about climate change, or science deniers and evolution deniers, because that's a huge problem. But
Yeah.
there's different types of anti-intellectualism, and we can go into that.
Yeah. When I mentioned this topic to my wife, I said we're going to talk about basically how stupid people are, anti-intellectualism, the descent into idiocracy.
Yeah.
George Carlin's famous thing. If you just imagine how stupid the average person is, and then realize that half of them are dumber than that. And my wife went off. And as she like that, you shouldn't do that topic. I don't want to be a part of that because that's a stupid topic. And then she ranted for like 30 minutes about how stupid people are. I'm like, honey, you should
No,
be on the show.
no,
You have a lot to say.
that's not what I that wasn't what I was saying. I was saying that yes, the anti-intellectualism and yes, the lack of critical thinking contribute majorly to the problem, but the biggest part of the problem is that they're politically active and they're mean and hateful. So like I don't remember a time when uh, people that, especially as a group, haven't done stupid things or said stupid things. So,
Well,
Agreed.
to her point, Natalia, you said that this is not a new thing, and I guess
No.
yeah.
No, I mean,
What I see from our perspective as Americans, what I see
yeah.
is that in American history, I remember reading that in a time before, decades ago, I would read in history books that were not quite so politicized. That the founding fathers were largely secular. They understood, they saw what damage had been done both when the Puritans left England and why they left England, because they always want to be so persecuted, right? Because they're trying to persecute other people, and then the surrounding community doesn't want to put up with that, so they leave thinking that they're the persecuting. They're the persecuted when they're the persecutors, and then as Benjamin Franklin pointed out, when they got over here, they ended up visiting that persecution on each other, so that the Puritans are fighting against the Quakers, and of course the Spanish Catholics are at war with the indigenous people and with everybody else. And so they saw what happens when religion has rule. And so the founding fathers wanted to, then they were extreme. You want to talk about elites.
Yeah.
These people were the elites. They were literally the Illuminati. They were this small collective of very highly educated men, and they were not in tune with the public of
Mhm.
the time, and so there was a rural uh, backlash, bordering on outrage against the secularism of the founding fathers, and that's what led to the Great Awakening, the waves of religious revivals that went across the country, and they were very much rebelling against the educated class.
Yep. And that's the funny thing now when when you look at politicians in recent years, in the past 20 years, you had, people like, obviously Donald Trump, thinking that, climate change was created by and for the Chinese, so that America could, basically, not produce and manufacture things and can compete with the Chinese, that you could inject bleach into your veins during COVID. You had Mitt Romney who thought that you couldn't open, or why can't you open windows on airplanes? You had Ben Carson saying that evolution was just thought up by Charles Darwin and was inspired by the adversary, aka Satan made him do it. But yeah, there's a lot of politicians nowadays. My favorite was well, "Don't Say Gay" by Ron DeSantis, which never isn't necessarily, well. I would say it edges on uh, anti-intellectualism, because why the heck is banning one word going to change a whole demographic of people? And
Yeah.
yeah. So we have our politicians who constantly are screaming from the rooftops, "I'm not a scientist, I'm not a scientist," which, yeah, that's okay. You don't have to be a scientist, but if you're going to be creating policies that are going to affect your constituents, that are directly tied to science, it is your responsibility to either work with, hire, listen to those that are science minded. One of my favorite and saddest examples, because I share the same last name, Ronald Reagan, no relation, by the way. When he was elected governor of California in 1966, one of the first things he did was seek to defund higher education. When it was during the Vietnam War, a lot of protests were going on in different UC schools, and he was flipping out, and saying like, "Hey, we can't have this." He even had I think it was his council, his education council, came out and basically said, "We're going to have this educated proletariat, and we got to stop that. We have to make sure the right people go to college, i.e., those people that fall into line, those people that will not speak, truth to power." And it's when politicians seek to destroy people's opportunities to get educated, you have to really, really question why. Why? What is their motivation? Why do they not want people to become educated, especially certain demographics, which we have seen, and one of a good example is maybe even the school to prison pipeline, where you have uh, privileged areas of the U.S. Having underfunded schools, and it creates the school to prison pipeline, where now the people that are doing most of the educating, or at least um, regulating of behavior, are cops, authorities, and not teachers and those that can actually show them the way in life. So you have, it basically creates this uh, a really fraught system here in the United States that I think is just getting worse. And I think by talking about it and having these conversations, which can be uncomfortable because a lot of times people think that the science is, politicized, when it's, actually a lot of it is, as science can never be totally objective, but it should be as close to objective as we can get it, right? But we still need to have these discussions. And by just saying, "Oh, well, this is just a leftist agenda," that discredits all the hard work and rigorous testing that has been done by scientists. So, um, yeah,
Many
I
of
think,
whom are not leftist.
yeah,
Just throwing that out there.
yeah,
And most of the people who are leftists, just throwing that out there, are not radical leftists, because if you noticed when you watch TV news, they can't say the word leftist without putting the word radical on there. And everybody that isn't on the far right, that anybody that doesn't have their hands in the underwear of fascism, is a leftist, and a radical leftist at that, because everything has to be binary. It's got to be 100% this or
yep.
100% that, because we don't have any fucking clue about nuance.
Spectrum of There's a spectrum to everything, and yes, and that's the thing, you nailed it on the head, especially when it comes to the internet. There is no nuance. Nobody You can't explain your thesis in 180 characters, or whatever characters you have. And there's always the whataboutisms. You could say a point and then they're going to come back with five other points 500 other points, really. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing is I think people forget that there is nuance and there are exceptions and everything, there's gray. Everything has gray.
Oh, I like to say it's not just a matter that you have to remember that there's gray between the black and white, but there's also a spectrum of color.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's extenuating circumstances and that sort of thing to everything. I want to call out a comment that I just saw. The
Yeah.
Kegi said most of my adult life I've studied great people, and most of them come from America. I'm just shocked how much the American population is dumb. I
And
mean, damn.
it's tough because the thing is, I struggle with this because there, there's a difference between dumb and well, ignorance and just not having, like having ignorance being left in the dark. You do not have the information present, to you, or you have no opportunity to get that information, right? There are those that are quote unquote ignorant because they haven't had the opportunity to have an education. And then there are those that are willfully ignorant that have the opportunity. It is presented to them, but they choose not to accept it, whether it's because of, a religion that taught them that, a distrust of politicians, a distrust of, or mistrust of politicians, or people that are considered intellectuals because they see them as a threat. And that's the thing is, as a science communicator, there is a challenge to convey science and convey very important points about evolution, climate change, even abortion as healthcare, talking about the death penalty, talking about anything, access to clean water and food, things like that. I mean, we still have problems in Flint, Michigan. Talking to people about this and not talking down to them, making them realize that I'm here to help, not to tell you what to do. But there is, and this I think brings us to a very important point about America, is this hyper individualism, this sort of
Hold
idea
on, I
that,
have to address something. I just saw the
yeah.
stupidest comment. Somebody says fascism is socialism. Does Aaron, because they think I have it two A's in my name,
Oh, okay.
does Aaron think that socialism is right wing? No. By definition, fascism is far right and socialism is on the left. Look it up. Look up both words. Learn the meanings of words before you use them in public.
Oh, fun fact, I was doing a, research based on or about book banning, and you'd appreciate this. In 1969, the dictionary was actually banned because it had, words like balls and knockers in it. But yes, look it up in the dictionary. Look it up. You can find that. Just Google it. Yeah, no, that's a big problem. I think people, or we have these keyboard, warriors that are out there just because they read something on the internet and read one mommy blog too many or one incel too many, and then have decided that they are now an expert in that particular field, and it's
Speaking
really
of which,
frustrating.
Speaking of which, that same person just commented that fascism is National Socialism. Yeah, the Nazis were the Socialist Party in the same sense that North Korea is the Democratic People's Republic.
Yeah,
Yeah, in other
people
words, they're
use words
not.
wrong.
It's not North Korea is not democratic. The Nazis were not socialists.
No, no, no. Let's look at Sweden. Let's look at, you know what I mean? We've got some good countries out there that we can look to for inspiration. And, I mean, we've all seen, I think, enough people from other countries commenting about our healthcare system who have moved here. I've met enough people who've moved to the States and I've marveled at the lack of accessible and free healthcare and just how it's created this sort of, yeah, a hierarchy that leaves a lot of people sick and dying and in, it's racked with debt, and that's terrifying, I mean, you can't if you get sick in the United States, it is almost instant, bankruptcy.
Yeah, I remember when my dad used to tell me, America's the best damn country there is, and I don't need to know about nowhere else.
Oh, no. No, 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 no. I mean,
Which was such an admission.
God.
I mean, how do you not know what you just admitted to me?
Yeah.
So the biggest problem that I had with being the kind of patriot that my dad
Mhm.
was that he wouldn't go to places like Los Angeles or Miami or New York because they're all too foreign.
Oh, and we're also godless heathens, godless fornicating heathens.
Yeah, he wouldn't go to American cities because they were foreign. I, on the
Wow.
other hand, have had the very good fortune that I've been almost around the world twice, and that's really amazing. But everywhere I go, with one exception, everywhere I go, that country does something better than America does.
Yeah.
And the kind of patriot that I always considered myself to be is, and I remember saying this when I was 11 years old. Why should we get chocolate from this country? Why should we get watches from Switzerland? Why should we? Why is it that all these other things, all these other places do something better than the U.S.? Why we're Americans? Damn it! Why don't we do the best everything? Because that's the way I was instilled, the kind of patriotism that I was taught
Yeah.
that we were going to have. Oh, yeah, by the way, the kind of America that we were when I was 11, what made America great is we could travel anywhere without having to show papers, unlike Russia. Until here in Texas, they tried to pass a show your papers law where they wanted to be
Yeah.
able to stop people, even students on campus. If you're walking from your room to the cafeteria, whatever, on campus, somebody could just randomly profile you, stop you, and check for your papers. And if you don't have papers proving that you're in the United States legally, they can arrest you and have lawyer or litigators go find those papers to prove that you're here legally, or they'll extradite you. That's what they tried to pass here in Texas. When I was
That's
11,
disgusting.
America was great because we didn't we didn't negotiate with terrorists until we
Yeah.
did, and we wouldn't torture prisoners until the Bush administration. And by the way, the negotiating with terrorists, that was the Reagan administration. So all of the things that used to be what what was great about America, not necessarily that America was great, but the things that were great about America, but all these things that have more recently been overturned, and almost always by Republican administrations.
Yeah. Yeah, for a government that want, or a, a party that says they want very little infringed upon them, they are very clear that they want to, get into either our panties or our lives and, disrupt them at any chance because it
The
doesn't sit
people who say
well with
that
them.
the people who say they want less
Yeah.
government want so much government that it legislates and observes and knows about everything you do in the bedroom,
Mhm.
right down
It
to your
wants to
very
know.
identity.
Yep.
That's how much government they want.
Yeah.
I want less government. I'm a liberal. I'm a left. Well, I'm not a liberal. I'm a leftist, and I want less government than the GOP currently do, than the people of small government want. I want less government than they want.
Yeah. No,
There's a
absolutely.
question before we move on. Uh, Uncle Charlie, why do so many Americans confuse democratic socialism with communism? There is not fascist socialism, but totalitarian socialism, where the government owns everything. They nationalize all the banks and all the companies, like Vietnam used to be, and so there's that. But y'all are talking about democratic socialism.
We have to show
Yeah.
in this mindset of always having binary, where everything is one side or the other,
Yep.
right? So people who are looking left to right, this is not just binary; it's also two-dimensional. So I'm going to break your minds by pointing out a right axis to another dimension. So that the political compass doesn't just have a left and a right and a middle. There's also another axis perpendicular to that with an up and down. And your totalitarians, your communists, right? The authoritarian types, that's up here. Where we are, I think all three of us, I know me and my wife, we are in the libertarian half, the less government half. And I'm pretty sure that most of the country is in the libertarian left quadrant where we are, where sadly, every president we've ever had in my lifetime, and I'm in my 60s, every president in my lifetime, Democrat, Republican, both, they have all been on the authoritarian right. Every
Yeah.
one of them.
Mhm.
JFK, the Bushes, the Clintons, all of them.
Yeah, I would say I'm not quite. I would put myself more, I guess, squarely in the middle rather than the bottom or the top. You know, I don't mind. I mean, as far as just government programs and things of that sort, like that's something I am very much an advocate for. I mean, is that kind of what you're saying as well, or would you still want to see government
I would be
involved in?
happy to. I'd be happy to send you a series of links
Yeah.
that I took for different political tests, different quizzes from different organizations, different sets of questions
Hmm.
on your stance on different issues that place where you are. And I took
Yeah.
6 different ones that were all different questions from different agencies. All of them put me in the dead center, not the far left, the dead center of the libertarian left quadrant. So
Mm,
I am one square to the right of Bernie Sanders. I am basically where Noam Chomsky is.
yeah.
Arn, sorry
Okay.
to
Yeah.
interrupt.
And you might find out that
Arn,
you may be further left than you think.
Arn,
Oh, no, no. I mean, when I said, I don't mean square in the middle, like left. I'm sorry. That was, yeah. This is where I got confused. Is this line in the middle? I'm more between the totalitarian and the libertarian. I was that center, but I'm way left.
Okay.
I'm super left. Sorry. I should,
All right.
yes, let me correct myself there. This is my also dyslexic brain going like, or I don't even know if it's dyslexic, but more just, yeah, I was viewing that, but rather than that. So
Arn,
No
yeah,
worries.
Arn,
far
sorry.
So
from
Peter, were
very,
you
very
telling me to
left.
get
Yeah. Are you looking at the private chat? Because you've got a ton of questions stacking up.
Yeah, I see them. So the Kegi says,
Uh-huh.
where does the term idiocracy come from? Thank you.
I actually do not. I mean, I know the movie, but I don't know exactly. Do you know where the term came from?
Yeah, but it is the movie.
Yeah, I mean,
That's where the term came
that's
from. So there,
yeah,
the
2006.
crusy,
Yep.
whether it's democracy or theocracy or whatever system of government it is,
Yeah.
well, this one is a system of government that is ruled not by theocrats, but by idiots.
Yep.
So an autocrat would be an authoritarian, right? Which is what we're headed for.
Unfortunately.
It's a funny thing
Yep.
for me to see how people in the United States, this was a system of government of, by, and for the people. This was the first time anybody had ever done that. It was a constitution that did not honor any particular religion. It was the most vague of terms, which was, by the way, pre-Darwinian.
Yep.
When they say you're a creator, whatever the hell that is, leave it up to you. Their creator, not our creator, because it's not all the same thing. They were very open about that. This was a system of government that was so successful and so had so much potential, I should say, that other nations everywhere else began to look at us and say, you know what, that's a really good idea. We should
Yeah.
do that. And yet here we are in this country where a frightening percentage of the people actually want an authoritarian autocracy, a theocracy, a dictatorship.
Yeah.
They want a king.
I would
Yeah.
You have no understanding of history at all. Well, no, they don't.
No.
I wanted to clarify because people are in the comments talking about how can libertarianism how can you be a libertarian socialist? Libertarian versus authoritarian. So on social issues and like uh, like gay marriage, legalization of drugs, you want less authority, and you could
Yes,
still
with a
be.
socialist system,
But when it comes to economics, you can be more socialist in that you agree with public education. So like the people government funded education and that kind of thing. So there's like the economic policies, and this is where I'm at. Like I agree with public education. I don't think there, but in a libertarian way, I don't think there should be laws uh, restricting access to safe abortions, uh, etc. Like legalization of drugs, or actually decriminalization of drugs, so that people who are on uh, some of the more debilitating drugs get treatment, not being criminalized, that kind of thing. So you can be left very unauthoritarian in some ways, but then government involvement in others.
So another example, the one that I want to bring up, I don't know of any country that is exclusively socialist. And the ideal situation in most countries, even communist countries, still deal in currency. So in that capacity, they're still capitalist in that they still have a currency. Whereas
Yeah.
true socialism or communism, they wouldn't have they wouldn't even have currency. But
Yep.
you have wonderful examples like Norway. which is one of the most ideal places in the world to live, and they have social programs
Hmm.
like their oil industry is socialized. That means, as opposed to in the United States, where you have the Koch brothers become super megalomaniacal beings who can literally buy the Republican Party, and they did.
Yep.
Right, you can have them, these two people who just hog all the wealth from this oil industry. It's in Norway, it's socialized, so it's paid for by the industry is paid for by taxes, and the profits are dispensed to the people. So every Norwegian citizen gets a check.
Yeah. I mean, that makes I don't know. Late stage capitalism, I feel like here in the United States has done a real fucking number on our country. Excuse my French, because yeah, what I see as a huge problem is not only the hyper individualism, but this sort of obsession with the American dream by people that don't realize that they're buying into this system is keeping them from the American dream in many ways. They're not going to be able to attain this great, they're never going to be a billionaire, but they're somehow backing and supporting billionaires. That's to me what is so absolutely asinine right now. And not, not realizing that they're backing and supporting people that would never take a seat with them at a dinner table ever, because they just see them as either a vote or more money in their pocket. But I don't have a problem paying taxes if I know that my healthcare is taken care of. I don't know if you know this, but yeah, of course you do. We talked about this. I got hit by a truck many years ago as a pedestrian on the shoulder of the freeway, and I had
Your
lost
own truck? Well, no one was in it.
my own truck. I know, right? It's a fun story. Some people have to just get hit by a '94 Ford Ranger to get their life in order. But I lost my health insurance a few months before that because I was an actor at Screen and the Screen Actors Guild, and they pumped up how much you had to make to qualify for health insurance from 7,500 to I think like 11,500, which is doesn't seem like a lot of money to make, but a lot of actors don't make that. And so I lost my health insurance, and I was in and out of the hospital for about a month, and I was in ICU for 5 days. I, was very gravely injured. And I think my bills at one point were about $400,000, 300 something thousand dollars. And a lot of that were there was a fund that actually helped cover that, and a lot of it has to do with just me not having insurance meant they jacked it up, right? Because that's what they do. They always cut deals with insurance companies. So that whatever 300 or 400,000 would have probably been 50,000. But one of the things that was really interesting when I was in the hospital the first time around, I was in ICU for 5 days, got transferred to a regular room, and I am not organized, so I left my old insurance card in my wallet even after it had expired. So they saw that and they assumed I had health insurance. And when they figured out about a week and a half into my hospital stay that I was uninsured, wow, the fight they got into trying to get me out of that hospital. And I ended up developing a staph infection, probably because I was released too soon and I lost, muscle in my leg because of it. But that just goes to show you, and I've had, and maybe, I don't know if Lalandra's had this too, but or maybe you too, Aaron, I've had doctor's appointments where doctors have actually, in this particular case, it was an OBGYN that I asked questions about just my life, like some other health problems that had to do with my lady bits as well. And she stopped me and said, "Hold on. I'm only paid to do your wellness exam. I'm not paid to answer your other questions." And I was shocked because, at the time I was probably, 21 years old. This is a long time ago, but she basically said, "The insurance only covers this. I will not answer your questions." So I don't know. I feel like I'm okay with living in a Norway or a Sweden. I think that might be the way to go. Paying more taxes, but knowing that you will at the end of the day not go bankrupt or, be treated with uh, you know, respect because they know that they're going to get paid. And maybe not buckets of money because it's, a different system over there, but it's still enough
And
so that
all these Scandinavian countries and others that use this much improved system, which we inspired and they improved upon, they were in the situation that so many people, so many right wingers now want to go to. They
Mm,
were in that place, and they knew why it was bad and why they needed to get out of that. And unfortunately, we don't know these things.
yeah.
The problem I had with a lot with the anti-intellectualism that I grew up with was that anything that happened outside of the experience of grandpa was not a thing to be discussed. So that we did not talk about anything real that happened in foreign countries or in history older than grandpa or any of that. I mean, we would talk about in my family, we would talk about hunting, fishing, and football, and that's it. And that's all, and nothing else. If you talk about art like you's gay,
Yeah.
that there was
That's
an association that if you
oh,
were intellectual, you were homosexual. I don't know how they drew that conclusion.
artistic. I mean, I mean, I don't know. I feel like nothing pulls ladies like being, I guess a hot rock star, right? I mean, why is that all of a sudden like, I don't know, you're gay, that I mean, sure, maybe, but like also what's wrong with that? I mean, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting that they kind of got sort of lumped together, conflated
And
into
then one
one
of
and the
the one
same
of the
thing.
lines one of the
Yeah.
lines that I remember hearing a lot when I grew up from, and this is from both sides of my family, unfortunately. I heard, "Well, they got book smarts, but they ain't got no common sense."
Well,
And what is common sense in whatever context? In every
yeah,
time they bring up that common sense, it was they don't believe things that we now know are not true.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that's I how do I even argue? That's not common sense, that's wrong.
You're just incorrect, and that's the thing is when people talk about facts versus emotions, there's a lot of times that, people bring up, things that are very much rooted in emotion, that have, 0 facts attached to them, even, like, when I was looking up, I've done a lot of writing about abortion, and if you look up abortion in the Bible, a lot of the verses in the text have nothing to do they say nothing really truly about abortion. It's all up for sort of, interpretation. Jesus said nothing about it, but it's again, they wanna kind of glean and or, what they can from it
Mhm.
that fits their narrative or just sort of kinda scrape what they can and have that back up their argument, and there really isn't anything
Numbers
there.
5 rather explicitly endorses abortion with God's approval and involvement.
Wait, which one? 'Cause
For
I was
Numbers 5.
okay, that
For
makes sense
no better reason
'cause it's Torah.
than a husband suspects that his wife may have cheated on him, that the baby in her belly may not be his. That's that's the reason the Bible gives.
Yeah.
A husband's suspicion of his wife's infidelity. That's a reason to perform abortion. This is according to
I
the
hate
Bible's family
people.
values.
Right? It's good. It's okay. You think she looked at your cousin wrong the other day. She may have cheated, and you need to beat that thing right out of her. I mean, it's
So,
woo.
Rita, I'm
Yeah.
gonna catch up on a couple of comments.
Oh
Vico
yes.
Plays, and I think I mispronounced that,
Oh,
offers €5 and says, "Longtime lurker, big fan.
hi.
Best of New Year to you all." Thank you
Oh,
very much for
thank
that.
you.
And then, Speaker Wiggin, this one apparently is aimed at you. Natalia Reagan, what is a good source of scholarly information on why there isn't another species of ape, big-footed or not, in North America of your colleagues or your own writing?
Honestly, I don't know if there's any real good skeptics books that are specifically about Bigfoot because I feel like a lot of skeptics would worry that that would alienate the biggest buyers of the book, right? Or Bigfoot advocates. I mean, honestly, let me do some research because I do not know any book off the top of my head that is by a skeptic that is specifically about why Bigfoot does not exist. The best I can really say is an bioanthropology or primatology textbook, which I know is probably not the answer you want, but I think that would be the first place to look. So, and now you're giving me some ideas.
Don't you have some YouTube videos about it,
I do.
Natalia?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can look at that. That's for sure. I did a Bigfoot or YouTube series called Talking Shit with Dr. Todd and Natalia. Thank you for reminding me, Lalandra. I did a series called Talking Shit with Dr. Todd and Natalia that they're all biological anthropology topics relating to Bigfoot. So, talking about their locomotion, dentition, diet, Gigantopithecus, the perceived or the, imagined ancestor of Bigfoot. I also have made some videos on Instagram and on TikTok. I can share those with RN and maybe we can put them. I can maybe put them in the chat later. But as far as just actual literary works, I mean, Jeff Meldrum's written a lot, and of course Grover Krantz, but they are believers, so that is from their perspective as Bigfoot uh, hopefuls, and I understand that. Part of me gets it. There's a wonderfully romantic notion of believing in this giant, handsome, bipedal creature roaming the Pacific Northwest. Oh, which dog is that? That one is that Odin? Oh no, that's Bowie. I love getting
And
to know your dogs. Oh, there's Falcor.
yeah.
Oh, and somebody said earlier that I said I'm a godless, fornicating heathen as a bad thing. Oh no, I think it's a good thing. Just so you know, I'm like I take that as I wear that as a badge of honor. In fact, my dad and his unfortunately late girlfriend, she'd passed away last year. They lived together for 16 years, and my dad's 69, she was in her 50s, and her parents are very sweet, but they're born again Christians, and they called my dad, godless, fornicating heathen. My dad's like, "Thank you, of course."
Yeah. Don't
So,
threaten me with a good time.
exactly. That's just a good Tuesday night. Oh
Yeah.
man. But yeah, it makes me laugh when they think that that's somehow I don't know. And I also think putting morality on sex is a very uniquely human endeavor, right? Like it's funny because you see a lot of very promiscuous animal species out there, whether it's the southern right whale that I think I spoke about yesterday, the one with the huge DNA satchels. They're very promiscuous, and you don't see the dudes out there slut shaming the whales for like, you had 8, cetaceans yesterday. Well then, you must be a 2-bit whore. So yeah,
I was reading that.
Okay,
Okay,
let me jump to Uncle Charlie. Says, why so Americans confuse democratic socialism with communism?
we got that one already.
Okay. The Kegi says, if Trump wins and gets his second term and his promised shock and awe, are you scared for the soul of America and an anti-intelligence agenda coming in? Well, I would have a hard time believing that Trump could ever win again because he can't run again because he's
right.
guilty of insurrection, and they're going to see that. Even though half the public insists on believing things they know are not true, or in not knowing any better. They
I'm
don't
not
want to
so
they don't
sure.
want to know what they don't want to know.
I'm not
Yeah.
so sure he's not going to run again because
No,
before
he's
he
going to
was
run. He's
elected,
running already.
a lot of people in Europe were asking us, "Are you sure Trump isn't going to win?" And I wasn't sure, given the things we're talking about, the
Yeah. Well,
anti-intellectualism and such, and also the apathy, the voter apathy. And 30% of voting Americans have not budged on their support of Trump, no matter what's
yeah,
happened in the past 6 years. And
he
all
hates.
of the
I hate,
challenges to him being on the ballot have to go through the Supreme Court, which is a
which is
kangaroo
stacked.
court
Yeah.
of Republican tip.
But the thing is, the only hope that we have is that the Supreme Court should know that if you allow this man to become the autocrat he wants to be, that no dictatorial authoritarian wants there to be a Supreme Court. So they will be taking their own power away if
Yep.
they allow him to. They're just going to allow him to take their power and disband them.
If they're
I
going
So
see.
to
the only thing the
Yeah.
Supreme Court can do in their own defense is to stick to what the Constitution explicitly states.
Yep.
It'd be so easy to say, the Constitution makes this very, very clear. There is no intelligent way to remove the office of the president from from the category of what the Constitution is talking about. So I don't understand how that can even be a dispute. But it has been disputed. There are constitutional things that are very clearly unconstitutional that still have to go before the Supreme Court in states, the state level, before they go to the federal level, no matter how obvious it is, because people want to hold to their infractions.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to move to the next one. Mark A. Smith offers $5 and says, "You said godless fornicating heathens like it's a bad thing."
Oh yeah. I just yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely think it's a good thing. It's something I am very proud about.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
So
highly recommend it. Just go for it. Just, if you're questioning whether you want to be a godless fornicating heathen, just dip your toe in the waters yet, just a little bit, and then jump on in and join us
yeah,
in a
is
big
is there a
promiscuous horde.
victim? Is there a victim in this? And how is it immoral?
Yeah, right?
If I'm not
I
even the
think everyone's
victim, then
winning.
how is it immoral? Then in the next one, Commoner Knight says, "Have you ever heard of destiny?" That was a hip hop band once upon a time, wasn't it?
I feel like it was.
He debated Matt Dillahunty on the quality of his abortion argument as a liberal. I was curious how your politics aligned with his. We surprisingly, Matt and I don't talk a lot about politics, but I don't think we deviate much. I think we're pretty much on the same page. And anarcho clownarchist 17,
I like
that's a
these
hard one to
names very
say,
much.
offers $2 and says Krupkin and Tucker are good libertarian thinkers. Tucker? Uh, I don't know which Tucker
Tucker?
you're referring to there.
Yeah, I don't know. I hope he doesn't mean
Yeah, but
Carlson.
surprisingly, I mentioned before that all of the presidents in my lifetime
Mhm.
were in the authoritarian right.
Yes.
The furthest left of them, although still in the authoritarian right, I was surprised that JFK was not a leftist, that Jimmy Carter was not a leftist, but neither one of them were. And the furthest left of all of them appears to be Richard Nixon,
How so?
because of the national health care plan that he proposed,
Mhm.
and the way that he elaborated on social programs. And I have a list.
Yeah.
I'd have to go find it, but there's a list of things that Richard Nixon did that were actually more leftist, collectively more leftist than all of these other presidents, which is kind of surprising considering it's Nixon.
It's Richard Nixon.
But with also the surprise, the only assault weapons ban that I've
Mm.
ever seen enacted, Ronald Reagan.
Mm.
Yeah, because when he was governor of California and he realized that black people have machine guns.
Yeah, he's a
Yeah.
that
He
I
was
mean,
also shot.
I get, it's I don't know. I don't know.
This was before he was shot. This was in 1967,
Yeah.
and it was the Black Panthers
Wow.
showed up at a protest, and black people with machine guns will scare your
Terrified.
right-wing
A
politicians
white, yeah,
right into a
politician.
weapons ban.
Oh my God. I bet his panties were in all sorts of knots. Wow.
Yeah.
Mm, yeah.
LB says, question: are there any signs that we've still maintained some semblance of intellectuality in public discourse, or are we just doomed to descend into horrific crowds of drooling, idiocratic crowds?
It's
But
a
here's the
fantastic
thing that
question.
bothers me. We still have universities worth attending, which, by the way, the entire right wing hates our universities. But the rest of the world is still sending people to come to
To
school in
come
the
here. Yeah.
US. Now, you would think at some point the balance is going to shift, and our best and brightest are going to go to Stockholm or Oslo or London.
Cambridge. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I shouldn't have said London, or I should have said Cambridge or Oxford. That makes much more sense. But that
Oh,
we would be doing that. There's not many people. Some people are doing that already, but not many. Most of the world sends their people to our universities, which our
yeah.
own country hates our universities. And this is a disturbing thing. Trying to explain to people.
Yeah.
I was in an argument with a 15-year-old. I didn't know that he was 15 at the time. I just thought he was. I thought it was somebody that was commenting in the last video that we did, where he was challenging a biblical scholar who told this renowned biblical scholar that he should go watch a Ray Comfort video to learn about the Bible. And then because of that statement, I challenged this. Why don't we just have a one-on-one conversation? And I realized he was quite young as soon as I saw him. But the more I talked to him, the younger he got, until I just, like, this is inappropriate. I mean, I'm not lying to you. I'm not trying to coerce you or anything. But whereas the religious right wants to get other people's kids as young as possible and lie to
Right.
them until they deprive them of their ability to do thinking, I would rather that the person be at least a legal adult. I know that their brain's
Yeah.
not fully developed until 25, but at least a legal adult before. And this is strange, before I can start undoing the lies they've been fed their whole life.
Right.
But this kid admits to me that while he's telling a Bible scholar to learn about the Bible from Ray Comfort, when we start talking about the Bible, the kid admits right away, "Well, I've never read it."
Okay. Well,
You believe the Bible, but you've never read it.
dear Lord, it's so.
How do you know you believe it if you haven't read it?
Well, honestly, that's the thing. I mean, when you hear so many politicians talking about, have you ever read On the Origin of Species? Of course not. A lot of scientists have probably not read On the Origin of Species, hey, that's fine. You don't always have to read everything, but there's very little diligence to understanding what you are so passionate about. I feel like in this country, I feel like there are so many people that again use things like before even like COVID, the anti-vaxxer movement, where it was a lot of, the Jenny McCarthy's saying that vaccines caused autism, and then all these mommy blogs that came up. And I actually was working on a comedy bit pre-COVID about, you know, as a scientist now, you're more apt. You need to kind of like speak their language and just like, okay, you want anecdotes? Let's start with Elizabeth the 16th who died of blah blah. Like you got to just give a bunch of anecdotes because stats are just a crap ton of anecdotes. I mean, you have to just kind of speak their language because they just want to come at you with anecdote upon anecdote upon anecdote, and that's the problem. Is that to them is the truth. If they know, like their weed dealer's third cousin you know, uh, got a flu shot and then got a cold, they're going to believe that over, the CDC coming out saying like, no, the flu shot is actually going to help you survive this year. And so, for me, a big way to combat this, I mean, aside from better messaging, let's sexualize science communication. Then people will care. No, but you have to kind of come up with good stories, good storytelling, whether it's including like climate change in movies and television, but kind of sneak it in so it's not hitting you over the head, or even like talking about, pandemics. I'm watching The Strain right now. Have you seen The Strain?
No.
I wouldn't say it's a great show. I would say it is a very relatable show right now, but it came out in 2014, 2015. It's Guillermo del Toro, but it is a pandemic that turns people essentially into vampires. That's where you kind of like it gets a little sci-fi. But all the things that we went up against during COVID, and it all takes place in like where I lived during COVID, Red Hook, Brooklyn, and I'm watching it, and it plays out just like COVID, and again, like I wish it was a better produced show or better written show. Maybe it would have made a bigger impact, but I think storytelling does have some hope to, I think, educate people, because facts and stats and hitting somebody over the head with, you're going to die, you're going to get this, you're going to do that, does not change hearts and minds. It really is kind of tugging the heartstrings, telling them a story, almost tricking them into thinking that they came up with the idea. That's how you kind of get, and that it's exhausting. It's an exhausting way to think about it, and it's exhausting to do, or even like, making them look like the good guy, like maybe making virtual signaling cool or something. I don't care how we get people to like stop hating on intellect, but whatever freaking works. Because I think
We
that
got to.
Speaking
I'm
of
sorry.
anecdotes, I live in Texas, and I was getting a gynecological exam, and the ultrasound tech asked me what I did, and I talked about science, and she said that's okay as long as other people can believe whatever they believe or whatever. And like, of course, I had my pants down, and I'm having my uterus examined during this conversation, and she was like,
As you do.
Yeah.
dear
And
Lord.
she was like, I was like, yeah, other people can believe what they believe, but as you can see here in Texas now, abortion is banned, and 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 it, it will affect not just people that you don't agree with, your mother, your sister, your your yourself, your daughter. uh, they, if they need an abortion because they have a septic pregnancy or something, and they need a DNC, they're going to have to go through a bureaucracy to get one.
Mm.
And she said, no, 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 because they can automatically anything out of existence. She goes, no, no, no. There's exceptions for the life of the mother, or health of the mother. And as we're seeing this play out, no, there's not. Someone had to
No,
Yep.
flee the
no,
state of Texas because they were being forced to carry uh,
yep,
a, a a pregnancy that would not survive outside the womb for more than a couple of days, risk her fertility, and she got permission from a local court, but then Texas Supreme Court took that away, and then Ken Paxton, our Attorney General, who our taxes fund him and his lawsuits, He just uses our treasury. He said that that the decision to allow her to have an abortion, maybe to save her life or her health, wasn't medical. Now, that
Yeah.
whatever we say to them, you're not a doctor, you're a
Yeah.
politician. They just
Yeah. So
project it
Dan,
right back on us.
Yeah.
yeah. So
You
Dan
And
know,
Patrick says that the judge who listened to the doctor was not a doctor. The judge was not a doctor, so the
yeah.
judge doesn't have the right to make that decision.
No.
Dan Patrick is not a doctor. Neither is
No.
anybody on the Texas Supreme Court. The doctor said this fetus cannot survive. This is not going to. We are not killing a baby. This is a baby that is going to die.
To
There's no
die.
ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Yep.
Might kill the mother too. Might rob the woman of fertility. This is what has to be done. And Dan Paxton says, no, fuck her.
Yeah.
Ken Paxton,
Force her to
Yeah.
force her. And this is another. We had another one. Speaking of
Oh,
the idiocracy, the anti-intellectualism, Louis Gohmert, and you can tell what kind of a capacity he has if you ever listen to that man speak. But Louis Gohmert wanted to force, I believe it was an underage girl, to carry a pregnancy to term when it was found that the fetus did not develop a brain.
oh, for the love of fucking God.
So it's not going to. It's only alive because her
Yeah.
body is feeding it.
Feeding it. Yeah.
Right? So it cannot live once it's born, but they want an underage child to bear all of the stress and trauma, body changing trauma. Imagine this is an underage child now.
And
This is
and
not
childbirth is very dangerous.
somebody with fully widened hips and all of the
Mhm.
attributes that they're going to need. No, this is an underage child not prepared for the birth process. But Louis Gohmert wants to force underage girls, rape victims, to give birth to brainless babies, because if you don't give birth to brainless babies, then who's going to vote for Louis Gohmert?
Yep. Well, this is what I wanted to bring up with the Trump argument is there are so many single issue voters. There are so many just absolutely I use pro-life because and Peter and I were talking about this yesterday because I actually I had an abortion when I was 22. I've talked about it very openly. I gave a talk on the Rhode Island state capitol steps when they were trying to basically make sure that it was legal in Rhode Island if Roe v. Wade ever was overturned, and thank goodness they did. But I made the point of saying that, pro-life for pro-lifers is just pro-fetus. For me, I am pro-life. I'm pro my life, and I'm pro-life of the living and breathing and living full human that stands before us. Um, it's disgusting. There's a abortion
As
clinic that was
George
shut.
Carlin said, if you're
Uh-huh.
pre-born, you're golden. If you're preschool, you're fucked.
You're fucked. And another reason we absolutely love, I would love the Church of Carlin is he would hate it. He would never have it, but it's the one that I would actually join, the Cult of Carlin. But in here in Beverly Hills, there was actually a DuPont clinic, which would have been one of I think 4 clinics in the United States that does third trimester abortions, which are of course women that do not want to do this. It's because it is a life or death situation, and it was
And
shut
coincidentally,
down.
when do you find out that your fetus doesn't have a brain? That would be the third trimester,
It would
right?
be towards the end, yes, because they
Yeah.
would not see otherwise. Yeah, there's a lot of I mean, and that's the thing, there are things that they can see earlier on. I have friends that have actually chosen to not carry out a pregnancy because they knew their child had Down syndrome, that is their decision, and, I have friends that have chose to have their children who have Down syndrome, whatever they would like to do, that is the woman's choice. But the DuPont clinic was supposed to open up in October here in Beverly Hills, California. Beverly Hills, where they have the majority of their politicians and constituents are liberal Democrats, and they actually cited they had anti-choice terrorists. Oh yeah, what are they called? They're called the survivors of the abortion Holocaust. That is what their name is, and they're a terrorist group. And they came and they basically intimidated the cops and the city council here in Beverly Hills. I've gone down there twice and given talks to the city council with a bunch of other women that are with Beverly Hills for Choice. But it boggles the mind that you can get one of the most dangerous plastic surgeries in the world, a Brazilian butt lift in Beverly Hills on any street corner, basically, but you cannot get access to a safe abortion, especially when your life is on the line. And California of all places, Beverly Hills. So, and I told the city council members, it does not matter to you because you are people of means, but women will come here from all walks of life, from all areas in California and maybe nearby states that won't have other options. They do not have the money to find somebody who can do
They're
this.
having to pass shield laws in some of the states. So if they're like this woman who fled Texas, to keep their information private so they don't get prosecuted when they go home.
That is so gross. I mean, it's just so much
Okay.
insult to injury, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have to read some. I've just tried to catch up on
Sure.
some of these comments. So Connor O'Felt says, question for the room. What would you think of making candidates for public office take a political compass test and publish the results? It can't just be one. It has to be the largest sample size possible. That's the way I thought of it.
Yeah.
I wanted to take all. There were only a half dozen available. I took all of them. And as I said, it was the consistency in the response, which is important too. Every single one of them put me in exactly the same place,
Interesting.
not
That's
just in the
really cool.
general area, but exactly the same place with
Yeah.
different questions. Okay, but yeah, that would be interesting to do. I think just people in general should take that and not just once, because you can have your ideas change about it. And there's also an aspect of when you take this, take it from the mindset of which position do you support. Imagine that you have dictatorial powers. You are an unquestioned autocrat, and this is what you're going to enforce on all other people. Think about how fair you are being to your subjects. Because
Have you heard of sorry.
if you think about if you're thinking about the people over whom you rule,
Yeah.
you're going to answer a lot differently than you are if you're only thinking about yourself. And the whole difference between the right and the left, honestly, from my opinion, is whether you're thinking about other people or you're only thinking about yourself.
Yeah.
I got mine, fuck all y'all.
Yeah.
That's the right wing position.
Yeah. I 100% agree. I just got hired by the city to work at Griffith Observatory. As you know, I'm a museum guide. But
I
they
spent a
make
lot
you
of time at Griffith Observatory when I was a kid. I very
me
much appreciate that my mother took me there, and I was not the intellectual dolt that I might have been because she took me to museums and to places like that, which were very beneficial for me. Go ahead,
right?
please.
No. It sticks with you. I think it definitely steers your path in a direction. Yeah, those are kind of defining moments. But yeah, when I got hired, they have you take all these because I'm a city employee, which is hilarious. I actually had to sign an oath to be loyal to my city, and I will have to be part of the emergency response if anything were to go wrong. But they also make you take an implicit bias uh, course. And then also you can take implicit bias tests, which are really fascinating. And I was short on time, so only I think took one or two, but you can take implicit bias tests for certain demographics. I mean, think that would be quite interesting. I mean, again, this is not an exact science, but I think they've done a pretty good job trying to determine what one's bias might be for like say old versus young people, different, trans versus cis people. There's different ways you can look at how you might observe the world that would surprise you, because it even surprised me, my result, especially if it was like I slightly preferred young people, which I always thought I liked older people. I'm not going to let that define how I think about old and young people, but it was just interesting to get those results. But even understanding that, because I think a lot of politicians, like you said, are they thinking about their constituents? What do they think of their constituents? Because I think a lot of politicians are just doing it for the glory. They're doing it for, you know, in some cases the money, in some cases it's just, it's a family job that you've been doing for years and you got to do it, but you don't give a crap about your constituents, especially 51% of them, um, and their rights. So yeah.
I would
Yeah.
make it mandatory to take a political compass test, voluntary, and allow them to publish their results publicly if they wanted to. Because
Yeah.
I don't like too authoritarian.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
And that would
again,
also impact all of that stereotyping about, when Fox News calls Joe Biden a radical leftist. The biggest problem leftists have with Joe Biden is he's not a fucking leftist.
no, I mean, we won't go into it, but I think a lot of people who are speaking up about Palestine would not call him a radical leftist, they would say he's absolutely not, or even saying that he's old and ignoring the fact that Trump is just 3 years younger than him and has
Also,
made
And
so many missteps, you know?
when you're in your late 70s, that 3 years matters, right?
Yeah, so much. Oh my god. Like, what if they were dating, it would be such a May December, like what? Okay, weird.
I gotta try to get through these comments. I'm sorry this is
Sure.
taking so long. Felix Mangus on abortion. If heartbeat means end of life, then heartbeat means life begins. Sounds logical. I wouldn't say that life begins if you're still in the womb, if you're still a completely
Yeah.
dependent organism. Your life
well,
literally hasn't begun, and this is according to
Yeah.
all even the old religious traditions. The people who wrote the Bible said that life begins at birth. The
but
Bible authors.
medically speaking, heartbeat at death is from a fully formed heart.
Yes.
Heart cells start beating, and this is when they want to say that a fetus is alive, but it isn't a fully formed heart. Doesn't have a fully developed nervous system at that point. So that's why they're trying to limit it at 10 weeks, because they say the heart's beating. But when heart cells start to form, they automatically start beating, and this is the sound they hear.
Okay, now this one, this is an unpronounceable name, so I'm just going to call it the world's most secure password. Says, Aaron, imagine if the U.S. were to turn into a true theocracy in 2024. Which country would you like to move to first?
Oh.
Well, uh, my favorite city in the world is London. My second favorite city is Melbourne. But if I'm not going to move to a city, then there's a cabin in the tundra in Iceland that's calling my name.
That's fantastic. I can imagine all those places would be a great safe haven from this shit show.
Yeah. Then Dr. Rodriguez says, is there other apes in the American continent? I mean, the whole thing. I'm pretty sure there is none. No, there are.
No.
Apes arose in Asia, spread into Africa. Then
Yeah.
great apes arose out of Africa and spread back into Europe and Asia. Um, it seems to be that. Am I right, Natalia? That's
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So Miocene apes you see in Europe, in Asia, and in Africa, and then the hominins arose from them. But the very first primates were in North America, but that was like 65 million years ago, and then they died out. So no apes here. There have never been apes here other than
you are
anatomically
talking
modern
about
humans.
prosimians.
No, you strepsirrhines? No, like plesiadapiforms.
Okay, well those are
No, not
pre-ape. I
plesiadapiforms.
mean,
It's hold on one second. Which is the one in the North American? They're very old. North American. Are you talking about the monkeys? The precursor North American primates.
well, as I understand it, it was the the earliest anthropo simiiforms, anthropoids. They start out in they're in Europe, right? The Parapithecids. They're in the European archipelago at that time.
Yes, and then I know that hold on one second.
And then
There
we
was
have the split where New World monkeys split from what was going to become Old World
old
monkeys,
world monkeys. Yeah.
and they end up in South America. But so the only simians we had were initially in South America, and as you said earlier, or as you said the last time we talked, some of them got into as far as Mexico after North America and South America joined.
But there were
But
the very first or earliest version of primates actually were in North America. Hold on, first primate. I'm trying to find
now,
one.
if you talk about plesiadapiforms, those are are plesiadapiforms even primates,
No, they're like
or are they?
the precursor of.
Yeah, precursor, primate precursor.
Um,
Yeah.
hold
But anyway,
on.
enough
Okay.
about
Anyways,
that. No
yeah.
one cares about
Sorry.
that.
It's not my world, but like as far as like paleo primatology, but still I try to. Yeah, and and that's the cool. Oh, this is one thing I do want to say about anti-intellectualism, and one of the things I wish there was a way to just like beam it into the heads of all Americans. Is that science is not religion. It is not fixed. It is not static. It changes. It is as you gather more information, you will change your results because that is how it works. Because we all saw during COVID, a lot of people were like, well, I don't know what to believe. It's changing every day. It's like because we're gathering more information. And that is how it works. And I remember watching it in real time in Red Hook, Brooklyn. My best friends are ER epidemiologists, and every day they'd come in, they're like, oh my God, there's kids, and they're getting like, they're having inflammation in the heart. We don't know new information was coming out every day, and it was just blowing their minds. They're like, COVID is
Not
wild.
not to nitpick. I think you said change your results. Did you mean change your conclusion?
Oh, yes, sorry.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
you just inspired me. I need to make a video on science is not a religion. There was somebody that posted to
yeah,
me today, this morning, that their religion, that they're a believer, their religion is science because the science supports a creator. I'm like, well, yeah, all of that was lies. So science is not a religion, and science doesn't support your creator, and you know that, both of them. So you're just deliberately lying. So I need to make a video explaining
mhm.
why science is not a religion, how science and religion work exactly opposite of each other, how
Yep.
religion is pursuing a conclusion that is not evidence, but you're going to believe it anyway, and science won't even believe its own indications. We'll say, well, yeah, this seems to be true, but
But
let's
we're not
not
sure.
say that let's not be absolute about
Yeah,
that, right? So we're going to say that we've proven it. Let's just, if you have a hypothesis and it's been so well supported for so long, for so many
it's
different
still
tests, that it would be obscene to question it anymore, because we've proven so well, but we can't call it prove it, can we? So we're going to call this hypothesis a theory.
yeah, yeah. No,
So it
it's
raises to the level of theory, which is as high as it can get.
yeah,
You can never prove it right. Religion is all about proving itself right, and
yeah,
science says you can never prove anything right. You can prove it wrong, but you can never prove it right.
yeah, yeah. And another thing too. I mean, well, when it comes to, I don't know. For me, I think when I hear the whole "I believe in science" or science is true, and whether you believe it or not, I also think we need to kick the word belief out of it. It's not about believing science. This is not it's beyond that. This is not having faith in something. This is about, no, I need to see the proof. You want to see the proof,
Yeah,
and and
and
and
when we say
continually
believe
test it.
You
again,
accept
there's different
science.
contexts
You
here.
don't believe it.
If you know something's true, then technically you believe that it's true because you know it's true.
Yeah,
How could you not believe it? But there's another context to believe, which means that you are determined to convince yourself whether you know it or not. You're going to pretend to know what you don't know. That's
yeah,
then it becomes make believe. So the religious context to believe is make believe. I'm going to
yeah.
try to get through the comments again. Sinister Porpoise offers $2 and says number 5:20 to 30. No, oh, it's numbers 5 verses 20 to 30. That's what that means. Okay. Then Matt White says, Natalia, can you speak to the paradox? UK state religion, but to get elected, keep stum about your faith. USA secular constitution, but you can't get elected without saying your faith.
Right. Yeah. It's very, and also there's this weird sort of I know, putting people on a pedestal as soon as they say something like "God bless," or that all of a sudden kind of gives them that down home vote. All of a sudden the hometowns are like, "Oh, they said God bless," then we gotta give them our vote. Yeah, I think it's should not be talked about beforehand. I think talking about one's morality, I think, and that's another thing. I think morality and religion are two very different things. I mean, like reality, morality. One can have a personal morality that is separate from one's religion, and I don't think you need religion to have morality. I've had that argument before with some very religious folks. So I think talking about what your values are, and like maybe like we talked about the moral compass test, that's something, but I don't think it it is applicable, unless when it comes to things like abortion, and if that was going to deeply affect how you sort of rule in that case. I don't want somebody coming in and then surprise, I'm also, anti-choice, and I think women should have no rights, and I don't like trans people, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, we just want to make sure it's not about the baby. It's about oppressing the woman. As
Yeah,
George Carlin said
yeah,
again, it's not pro life. It's anti woman.
yeah, absolutely. And
Okay,
also,
so
yeah. Mm.
go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say, because it aside from just anti-woman, one of the biggest ways to get yourself out of poverty is education, and you can't get an education if you're pregnant very early on and are forced to give birth. That makes it really hard. to get an education. So it really is kind of that institutional poverty that we see, and it just kind of furthers that by removing the option for education by forcing someone to have a baby.
So Andrew Cummings says, you mentioned climate change earlier. How do you
Mhm.
feel about climate science illiteracy / denial in the U.S., specifically nowadays?
Oh, it's disappointing, especially since we have so much information out there that is readily available, and we have examples through and through the United States that we can see, whether it's actual oceans rising and, land being sort of chipped away in the United States. We're literally seeing Florida just kind of getting like it, sort of swallowed by water. And it's still like, nope, no, it doesn't exist. But I think climate change is interesting because I actually was looking at,
Shut up.
is that Falcor?
Yes, he's barking in his sleep.
Oh, he's chasing he's getting himself a rabbit. I just want he's catching himself a little prize. I was looking at, the ways that the threats to intellect and, religion, capitalism, and sort of this American hyper individualism. And with climate change, I feel like, if it's religion, it's God's will, God just, he's sending the flood. It is what it is. We're going to be fine. If it's capitalism, if caring about climate change is not going to benefit, or it's going to negatively affect my financial portfolio, then I don't care about it. And if it's that hyper individualism, it's about that idea. If it means that I have to be inconvenienced, I don't want any part of it, right? Like I don't want to be. And that's the big thing I think about America, is we have all three of those things, and a lot of people are just sort of drinking the Kool-Aid of, plug your ears, cover your eyes, put your head in the sand. Oh wait, the sand is now covered with water, I'm going to drown.
Here's my take.
And what they don't see, like with the climate change example, is that they're not just hurt. You can't make a law that affects all Americans without hurting themselves too. So their businesses, their livelihoods, lives are going to be affected by climate change also.
Yeah.
My take on it is that, Christianity, to my experience, where Christians want to say, and often do, that the reason we're atheists is so because you just want to sin, right? You want to escape responsibility, and every accusation they make against us is a confession, because Christianity wants to escape responsibility. They don't want to be responsible for a
Yeah.
damn thing. Anything they do, the devil made them do it. They don't have to. They don't have to own up for anything. They don't have to pay recompense. They could just say that Jesus has forgiven me. They don't have to help anyone. You can just pray, literally wish upon a star that they get the help that they need somehow without them having to lift a finger to do anything.
Hmm.
That they're completely without responsibility. And so, and there are other things about that I've ranted on before, but with the climate change thing, that is another denial of responsibility. This is be something that, first of all, if on the individual level, that we could all work together and be as conscientious as we want to be, and we're not going to solve the problem. This is going to be a top-down problem. This is where the
Yep.
industries are the big killers. This is where you're going to need legislation, regulations,
Hmm.
federal level regulations worldwide for different industries and so forth, which are the big polluters, right? Which are the big problems in most things. The sad thing is that environmentalism could mean shit tons of jobs. If we were going to do this properly, we could actually make huge industries out of addressing climate change. But of
Yeah.
course, the people who run the oil industries don't want you to know that,
Right.
and they don't want you to think that way. So they come up with all of this propaganda against, electric cars and everything else. Talk about what horror stories all of that would mean. I disagree. I've seen where other countries have started initiating some things where they actually do produce jobs out of it.
Yep.
But the reason that people don't want to is because they don't know how they can have an effect. Individually, you can't, so it's scary. And it also, the first time I remember hearing opposition to this was in a classroom where somebody brings up, climate change as an issue, and one of the kids responding says, "Well, I drive a '69 Chevelle 454, and I ain't gonna stop. I'm gonna keep driving that because it don't make no difference what I do. I ain't gonna change the world." Fine, you drive something that gets 3 miles a gallon, and that's your right, and it doesn't matter what effect it has on anybody else. If it becomes your responsibility, then fuck all y'all. I'm going to do what I want.
Yeah.
That's that's their position.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I think, feeling helpless and or leaning into they just can't do anything, so why should they? And I think that
Until
that is disappointing, and I understand that, like, on a it's not our plastic straws, right? Like, I think for a long time we were being told by corporations, if you pesky kids stopped using so many of those single-use plastic straws, this whole thing wouldn't have happened. It's like, no, corporations, stop, producing so much greenhouse gases with all your polluting. Yeah, it's definitely a top down thing, but I think also there's a way that people can get involved. And I worked in, and I talked about it a little bit. I think yesterday and past the first live stream we did about how I worked in Panama and I studied spider monkeys there, most heavily deforested area in that area, and they're now there's an it's kind of cool. Like my uncle worked with a company who's now doing reforestation down there with using carbon credits, giving landowners incentives, financial incentives to because a lot of times we especially a lot of Western Europeans, Americans might sort of not give enough credit to those people living in the areas that we're doing research in, because a lot of times, let's face it, we're in different areas of the world that we're not from. And we think, oh, they don't care about their ecosystem, they don't care about their environment. Oftentimes they very much do, but they still need to eat, they need to live, they need to be able to make a viable income. And so when we give and offer those sort of solutions, I mean, that is a way that those landowners are individually changing the landscape, right? Like if some of those landowners are going to create, hectares and hectares of forest now, which are going to be, have a very positive influence, not just on their very, local ecosystem, but also on the lives and the livelihood of many migratory birds and other, endemic animals in that area, but also increase the water in the area too. And so hopefully cut down on the desertification and all that good stuff. So again, it's about giving
it's
incentives.
true.
Hmm?
It's true. It is a top down thing. Um, it, trying to address a systemic problem as individuals, we're going to fail. There
Mhm.
was like this greenwashing of recycling
Yeah.
that came from the oil and plastics industries, and it turns out uh, we have we all participate in recycling. Not all of us, but a lot of us do, and a lot of it still winds up in the ocean because
Mhm.
what it's made out of, and the industry itself is producing pollutants. And not everything you put in recycling is recyclable. All the
Yeah.
plastics, and so we need like systemic change, and you have to get that politically. But then there's the rub that, like, in here in Texas, uh, a bunch of our textbooks were just rejected because they criticized the oil and gas industry, and
Oh
that
god.
makes money, and that's like if you're a politician who gets political contributions from the oil and gas company, you're 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 in it, you have a job. If you're somebody that stands on their principles but it has no funding to run, then you can do you're not in power to do anything.
Yeah.
And that's why there needs to be publicly funded elections.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I also agree that or, I would like to see politicians have more accountability and, education before they're making any sort of these policy, proposals or changes because they
I think
clearly don't understand the science.
if they even if they did understand the science, their money and them staying in power is dependent upon them uh, adopting the policies that in Texas for sure
Yeah.
that benefit oil and gas.
So I ran for public office once upon a time, something I don't intend to do again,
Mm,
except maybe in special circumstances. But I was in politics just long enough to know that I didn't ever want to be in politics because it's not for everybody. It's just about begging for money all the time. I was told that under a normal election year to run in my district, you would normally need to start the race with $35,000 and then climb up from there
dear
for a
lord.
job that pays $21,000 a year and you only work every other year. But you have to start with $35,000 just to get the campaign going.
And what were you running for?
State senator.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So the If I was running a similar campaign in England, I would be capped at 35,000 pounds. You're not allowed to spend more than 35,000 pounds. But here you have to start with
It's so stupid.
$35,000. So
Oh,
this is why is there money in politics? Because it takes so damn much money, and then you end up being owned by the people who donate. Because there were laws in Texas that businesses, corporations, can
yeah.
just buy the politician.
Yeah.
We had a governor, Rick Perry,
Yep.
that we he would have huge or anything over $100,000 that came to him from any company.
Yeah.
Within 30 days, he would have legislation pushed through that benefited that company. So it's pretty clear how they're being bought and sold, politicians. We have a system where we have monopolies. Well, you don't have an absolute monopoly, do you? But you only have 5 companies that run everything, right? So every company, every small business you think is a small business is actually a subsidiary of somebody else who's owned by somebody else who's owned by somebody else. And so there's ultimately five dudes that are calling the shots for everything in every industry
Yeah.
across the country. Wouldn't it be nicer if we didn't allow these kind of super monopolies like this? Wouldn't it be nice if we could have small businesses actually be a small business and not get wiped out by the Walmarts of the world?
In
Yep.
America,
I think so.
the
I
airwaves are
agree.
owned by the public. Why not donate some of that time, radio stations and broadcast stations to political campaigns? Why make them pay millions of dollars to have the time? I mean,
I like
That's great.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I
the,
like the idea of ranked voting
Yes.
because I don't like having a third party come in and just ruin the outcome so that the greater evil ends up winning. So with ranked voting, if you didn't get the candidate of your first choice, then your vote goes. If he doesn't win, then your vote goes to that next candidate, your
Yeah.
number 2 choice.
and I
So out
didn't.
of 3 people, your second choice wins. That's still a better outcome, and it also means that you don't have third parties spoiling the election.
Exactly. That's yeah.
I
And then you can have any number of people, like England does. Again, they'll have 17 people running for the same office, and on the final day, when they call the tally, they have all 17 of those people sharing the stage to find out who won. And so there was one guy up there at one election I remember seeing where there was a guy with a big steel helmet, and his name was Lord Buckethead.
I think I remember that.
Yeah, he represented the very, very silly party, and it sounds like a Monty Python sketch, and I think it is a Monty Python sketch, but this was also real life. That Lord Buckethead he didn't win, but he had to be on stage with the other 17 candidates for that office.
I love that though. I mean, I don't know. I think the US it's a silly place. I hate that it's a
It is so
popularity
corrupt.
contest. Well, I mean, because like with the whole money thing, it really is a popularity contest, you know? I mean, there's tons
charisma. Yeah.
yeah, it's having like razzle dazzle, like, like more rhinestones, more fringe, I mean, like what I I don't know. I would much rather see, and I've helped out some actually local politicians in the past month or so. I just did a comedy show for a man named JP Bird that's running for city council here in Los Angeles, and he's awesome, But it's just interesting watching like this grassroots, campaign kind of getting started. And he's not taking a dime from any companies. He's like it's 100%. He's only doing individual donors, like small donors and I respect it, but I'm also like, that's scary. I can imagine like, because he's putting a lot out there. But I don't know. I just think the
I would
popularity
love to
contest is so sad, huh?
It
I would
is.
love to criminalize the money in politics thing, which you're never going to
Yeah.
be able to do because we are so corrupt.
Yeah.
That the money in politics is what drives it, which is why politicians are owned by the people who donate to them. They're going
Yeah.
to vote the way their owners say, not the way their constituents say.
I didn't mean
That's
to
why
imply
that needs to
earlier
change.
that individuals can't do anything. You can do things, but we also need some systemic change. And us doing things as individuals, a lot of times doesn't work if the system is the problem.
Yeah. I got
Yeah.
to get through some of these comments. Anarcho Clown Christ, Anarcho Clown Archist 17 offers $2 and says Benjamin Tucker and Piotr Kropotkin, left wing liberals. I was clarifying on a statement
Oh,
he
okay.
made
Thank
earlier.
you. Thanks. Yeah.
And then Lou Hellickson says, what do you think about the support of Israel in mass supply simply for the Christian support of the God of Israel? I am absolutely against declaring support for someone based on religion. I'm absolutely
Yeah.
against declaring religion as the motivation for any action or policy.
Yeah.
If religion is your motivation or the reason behind your action or policy, then you still have not given a reason. I am not at all happy with what's going on. I know Israelis who are not as all happy with what Netanyahu is doing right now.
Yes.
And we are not happy with Biden for supporting it. And we know damn sure that Trump would have supported it too. So there's
Oh
just,
yeah.
yeah, either way, we just know that our country is going to behave that way for that country, and they're going to declare religious reasons for it, and they're going to justify any crime because of religion.
But with Biden, and I'm not justifying it at all, but the criticism of Biden and his support of Israel, which at first was very uncritical, Biden's been calling for them to protect civilians too. Now that
That makes
like, you're not
yeah.
going to get that from Republicans. They're going to do what they're going to do,
Yeah.
no matter what you say.
Yeah, and
I mean,
I realize that it's a tightrope, and it's a very sensitive situation. I mean, I have friends in Israel, and so I realize how frustrating this is going to be for a lot of them. That I'm even saying something like this, because there's not a simple answer. There just isn't.
Yeah.
I saw this movie one time that I absolutely love called Eat the Rich, where a Cockney politician grabs the leader of Israel and the leader of Palestine, throws them in an alley, and threatens to beat them both up if they don't settle their problem. There, solved the Middle East crisis. It was hysterical, but we know it's not that simple.
Yeah.
But what's happening? Genocide is not the answer. It's just
No.
not the fucking answer ever.
No.
So, and retaliation, I don't say is justified either.
No.
So, getting back to the questions, the Sinister Porpoise offers $2 and says Ray Comfort and Kent Hovind failed the Turing test. Okay. Then Nadia Yvette Chambers offers $5 and says, what are people going to do to get various people out of the country before the theocrat fascist seize absolute power and mass imprison them and worse? That's the thing, is I don't see how a majority of Americans could vote so much against their own interest. I could almost see it when so many people hated Hillary Clinton for whatever reason. They hated Hillary Clinton, that they let Trump in on the excuse that, look, fine, let's just watch the world burn. And then we saw what happened, or some of us saw what happened. And then I'm seeing it's a scary thing seeing the interviews with the MAGA people. I'm like, do you even live on the same planet I do? Where are you getting all your figures from? I go into their houses and I see it's like all of their stats and graphs have been turned upside down. It's suddenly they're complaining that Obama didn't respond properly to the 9/11 crisis. Excuse me, that was Bush. Obama had nothing to do with it. Obama wasn't president yet, but I've heard these kind of comments.
Yep.
And the question,
So they don't have a reality. We don't share a reality with these people.
And the question, what are we going to do before there's mass incarceration? America already has most of the world's prisoners.
Yeah,
there's
we're
already mass incarceration here.
So then I hear from these people that every Democrat is a cannibalistic, devil-worshipping pedophile, and that includes every actor in Hollywood. So I remember addressing one of these people, one of my relatives. I'm like, do you really believe that Tom Hanks drinks raped baby's blood while he's worshiping Satan? And the response is, you can't prove he doesn't.
Well, Uncle Jim, I can't prove that you don't either. You know, I mean, what we two can play at this game.
That's what I would. That's my response too. I can't prove that you don't either. If we're going to be incredulous here.
Yeah.
Dear Lord. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
so when I hear that Satanists are child molesters, and I hear this statement that you hear all the time about how Satanists are getting arrested for the child trafficking thing. I'm like, really? You hear about all that all the time, do you? So if we go over to your computer right now and you Google, Satanists, whatever, if you just put in Satanists in the news, Google the news, let's see what the news stories are, shall we? And we did that. And I'm like, oh, look at this. The Satanic Temple wins this court case supporting First Amendment rights. The Satanic Temple is advocating for this other support defense of First Amendment rights. The Satanic Temple was this other. That's what I'm seeing.
Yep.
Where's the thing about all the arrests for child trafficking? That doesn't seem to be there. Do you have to watch One American News to see things like this, or can you just like randomly just Google it and why isn't it there? But I get never.
They just
You
confused
never
with
get
the
an
Catholic
admission.
Church. Yeah.
You never get an admission
If it's
that they were wrong. That never
if
happens.
it's their preacher, if it's Trump, that's being accused of rape. It's due process. But they can accuse anybody they want of being a child molester, without any kind of due process.
Okay, going on to the next question. Golden Skeptic. Oh, the Golden Skeptic offers £5 and says, Aaron, do you ever think that the religious will ever understand the difference between natural and supernatural? Well, the religious is a very broad category. There are scholars there are respectable scholars who are religious and also advocate for evolution, for example. I mean, there are people who understand a degree of the nuance. They have to compartmentalize their religious beliefs somewhere, but there are people, there are believers who know the difference between natural and supernatural, and then there's a hell of a lot, and these are the ones that I debate with, who don't, who think that nature is supernatural. They had that argument just days ago, that somebody said that everything that happens as nature is magic, essentially.
Oh dear Lord. Yeah. Okay. Well,
They don't know what magic is. They don't know that supernatural means magic.
Magic.
They say, I don't believe in magic. I just believe in enchantments like blessings and curses and water bending and necromancy and
that sounds
golem spells and incantations and all the other shit that's in the Bible. But I don't believe in magic.
No, exactly. In fact, we're gonna ban Harry Potter because it makes us uncomfortable. That was one of the books that was banned, I think, in 2019.
Oh yeah, I caught my neighbor. My son was wearing a Harry Potter T-shirt when he was like 10, and I go outside to call him in for dinner, and I see he's 2 houses down the street, and the neighbor is bouncing a book off of his forehead, tapping him in the forehead with a book. And I call his name, and the guy sees me and runs into his house.
What the
And I come to my son, what the hell was he doing? He was tapping a Bible against my head saying, I rebuke thee, I rebuke thee.
What?
Because he was wearing a Harry Potter T-shirt.
Oh my God. The stupid.
Yeah.
No. I mean, that, yeah.
Yeah, because the kind of Christian that I live around here in Texas, people down the street, for example, skinhead.
You said skinhead?
Christian nationalists. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Shaved head, full-on Christian nationalism, doesn't know a damn thing about anything.
Yeah.
But just believes. So Tenebrous Sint, and I hope I said that right, can you do a video on the evolution of mini species found in Patagonia? Mini species?
Did you spell it M-A-N-Y or M-I-N-I?
M-I-N-I, mini species in Patagonia. I have no idea. You're going to have to let me know what you're talking about.
I will look it up.
Yeah.
Let me look it up.
Okay, so then Adrian Ortiz offers $5. I'm really going to have to fly through these comments because we're getting so many of them. Adrian Ortiz offers $5 and says, following Aaron since 2016, 2017, and I am grateful my mom introduced me to you. Lifelong atheist, struggling with purpose and identity. Your work helps a lot. Thank you kindly. And Captain Foster 5 offers $5 and says, began to rewatch your systematic classification of life with my two-year-old, 3-month-old granddaughter sitting next to me. She may not understand yet, but she will. Aw, thank you so much for that. That, by the way, was my wife's idea. I don't know. I'm embarrassed that it wasn't my idea because it was the most important series that I've ever done.
Aww.
So full credit to my wife for telling me to do that. And I wasn't feeling it when she told me to do that. It wasn't until I was like 3 or 4 episodes into it when I started to realize how important this was, that nobody had ever done this before. So Nadia Yvette Chambers offers $5 and says, IRV is a bad method for ranked choice voting. I don't know what IRV means. Is a bad method for ranked choice voting. Schulz/CSSD and Tideman's ranked pairs are much better methods of RCV. That means ranked choice voting. IRV, I don't know. I'm guessing the V means voting. IRV problems threaten RCV overall. I'm going to have to look these.
Maybe it's supposed to be IRL, like in real life, or maybe I don't know.
I don't know. I think it's
I'm gonna
meant
look
to be a V. I mean, I'm happy to look into that, but and look into the options. But something needs to change, and I don't know where it's going to come from if somebody doesn't start talking about it. So Omega Weapon says we need a no-party technocratic democracy with no lobbying, super PACs, and limited donations. Think about this: lobbying. Somebody came up with that and thought it was a good idea. Let's just have people standing out in the hallways representing different companies that just offer massive amounts of money to individuals and say, hey, I'll give you $10,000, $25,000, $100,000 if you vote this way.
So I can own you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we don't want to be corrupt. Let's do that.
Yeah.
The same people came up with what is it? I forget. I'm having a senior moment. What is the name of the policy where you just waste people's time?
Oh, filibuster.
Filibuster. Somebody came up with a filibuster thinking that would be a good idea. Hey, let's just read from the phone book and waste everybody's time for hours so that nothing can get done. Because that's the way we want things to not work.
It's just such a childish move, too. It's just, like we've got popularity contests. We have just like, I'm just going to like talk for a long time so we don't have to do anything. And like, what color is your hair? Blah, 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 blah. I don't, yeah. Like why? America is really embarrassing.
The level that lobbying is embarrassing. It's beyond embarrassing. I don't know if you saw the Barat episode where he pretended like he was a lobbyist who wanted to get politicians to adopt a weapons training program for children.
Yeah.
And no matter what ridiculous thing he said or had them say, they said it because they thought they're getting a political donation out of it.
So good. But it's embarrassing, but it's all, yeah, but you're right. It's beyond that. It's terrifying because these are the people that we are trusting to hopefully lead our nation or at least help us, their constituents, and they really do not care. If you have the money, we can be bought for 5 easy payments of $19.95.
We have another comment from somebody who does not want their name to be read because they made it unpronounceable. So
Got it.
Unpronounceable name number 2 offers $5 and says, is it possible T-Rex could have used its arms for communication or expression of intense feeling of deep affection?
I'm just
having the T-Rex only had 2 fingers, so he's probably pretty good at making peace signs.
Yeah, right.
Or he could use the English vernacular and tell you to fuck off.
Yeah, they weren't good at hugging. What is it? Push-ups, hugging. Yeah, they had some shortcomings, quite literally. Yeah, it's a sad one, but I love that question.
Nadia Yvette Chambers offers $5 and says ranked choice voting isn't enough for Congress beyond that. STV, don't write in initials. STV, sexually transmitted voting, I don't know. Or MMP, multi-mechanical people, I don't know.
Don't worry, I'm right there with you. I have to look up abbreviations. Like my students would send in abbreviations and I was like, I don't know what I didn't even know what a BBL was because I kept hearing it on comedy shows and I finally realized it's a Brazilian butt lift. I had no idea. No idea.
I never would have gotten there.
I didn't know.
To read the question properly, Nadia Yvette Chambers offers $5. Ranked choice voting isn't enough for Congress. Beyond that, STV or MMP are needed, aka proportional representation, like NZ, Australia, Germany, etc. At least I know what NZ means.
Okay, good. Sexually transmitted voting. I'll trade you 1 chlamydia for 1 gonorrhea. More points if it's antibiotic resistant.
Dr. Rodriguez offers, what is, anybody want to guess what currency that is?
Which one?
It's a capital letter R before the dollar sign. And I'm guessing that that's not Romanian dollars. They don't use dollars, right? I mean, what the hell? I don't know
Um,
what offers 20 somethings
well, thank you.
and says you have to realize that that is comforting, believing there is an evil conspiracy making your life miserable takes away a little of the pain capitalism gives us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know
Yeah. Blame it
somebody,
on
by the
others
way,
can be nice.
I know somebody, by the way, who identifies as a communist. And I said I'm going to have a show one day where you just explain to me. He said that I'm not a capitalist. Well, I think I'm a capitalist. How would you know if I am or am not? So we're probably going to have that discussion at some point.
Oh, good.
But Hans Kettering offers $4.99 with no message. Well, thank you very much, Hans. All right, and I'm finally caught up on the comments. So,
Okay.
It is
where were we at?
Brazil.
Lalandra, did you have something?
It's Brazil. He says that it's the Brazilian real. A real.
Real. Okay, thank you very
Brazilian
much for
real.
that. And then somebody asked what RN identifies as. I don't know that in what context. I took a class in
A Yeti.
philosophy where I took a class in philosophy where every other question was "Who are you?"
Was
So
this an
I got it
anthropology
after.
class?
No, this was a philosophy class. Every other question, it was the first question is "Who are you?" And then the third question, every odd numbered question was "Who are you?" And so I eventually figure out that they don't want my name over and over again. So they want all the different ways that I identify, perhaps.
All
I'm
your
an American.
intersection?
I'm a Homo sapiens. I mean, so I start experimenting with that, which I thought was a neat way to do an opening quiz. We'll say like day one. Hi, this is first day. You don't usually get this, but we're going to take a quiz on your first day of the
Yeah.
class on things we haven't even covered yet. And every other question is, who are you? And
I
somebody
like
says Klingon, maybe.
right. No, that's funny. Well, no, I think it's important because there's a lot of hate against, the use of pronouns or even intersectionality and just like, this is ridiculous. And it's like, no, but you identify as a lot of different things and that's okay. Like, and acknowledging that different intersections mean different ways of walking through life. And,
I
we
would
talked about
think.
it.
I would think at some point we figured out that most of let's say the country, but probably the world, but most of the country probably has a degree of bisexual tendency, a degree.
I have
Like
no
let's
idea
say
what you're
a
talking about.
yeah, not everybody. I'm just going to go out there and a very risky statement
Yeah.
and say that maybe most people are not just gay or straight.
Yep.
Most people probably straight, right? And then there's some that are gay, and then there's the broadening category for people who might experiment one direction or another. But even if that's the case, even if the majority of people are something less than 99% heterosexual, that doesn't mean they're trans. And the degree of people who are the percentage of people who are trans is so very tiny that for that to be the number one talking point for half the country doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Well, I got to be aware of somebody's pronouns. How often does that happen, Joe
Right.
Bob? Seriously.
Exactly. It's
Why is
yeah.
this such a big goddamn deal to you?
Yeah. I thought it was really funny that, you got an adult man named Kid Rock who's getting his, chonies in a bunch over Dylan Mulvaney repping a shitty light beer. When honestly, like, let's be real, and all those other country music stars coming out, but what other demographic loves sequins, rhinestones, and fringe more, than drag queens? It is country music singers. I mean, forget it. They got that market cornered. And I do a comedy bit about this whole idea of like, where have all the masculine men? Because there's so many videos on TikTok that have popped up about like, where are all the masculine men? And like, like our forefathers, and I do a whole bit where I break down George Washington. And I'm like, do we have the same forefather? because, what's considered masculine and what's considered feminine has changed over the years and will continue to do so. But let's just go through his aesthetic, and it's a picture with his rosy cheeks and his, curled and powdered wig and a low pony with a velveteen tie, his ruffled blouse. You notice I said blouse, not shirt. His fitted blazer, the tassels on his blazer so he can shimmy on into the Revolutionary War. He's wearing snug fitting capri pants. Is that the Bill of Rights in his pocket, or is he just happy to see you? I mean, it really is a totally different aesthetic
I've
than
got a cod piece.
right, exactly. I want to see his John Hancock. I mean, it's
High
ridiculous. And
heels and stockings. You left those out.
well, the high heels, the short kings were the originators of the high heels. So like in Europe, that was the beginning of high-heeled sneakers were short kings putting them on, and then later our ladies adopted them. But yeah, he wore the silk stockings and the high heels, and so I joke that it's instead of forefathers, it's more about ready to get on all fours fathers, because that's what it looks like. And there's nothing wrong with that. Again, because like you mentioned, sexuality, is very much a spectrum. We now know, pansexual is probably pan or bisexual, whatever you want to look at it, it's a wide range, right? And there are people at varying degrees, and that can change throughout your life. Also, it varies on where you live, what is accepted. A lot of people are incredibly repressed because they can't be themselves wherever they are.
I
So,
remember reading
like,
an art. I remember reading an article about it was written by this person who
mhm,
allegedly invented high heels in what was it, whatever the 15th century or whatever. And the reason that he invented high heel shoes was because he liked the way that it made men walk.
yeah. I love that. I love that. He did it for himself. Like that, isn't that kind of like, isn't that smart? Like he invented a whole thing just because he's like, I like to watch him walk like that. Slower, just like that. Let me give you another inch of height. But well, there was a new study that came out. I think it was a Gallup poll that found that 20%. So like wait, hold on, let me remember the stats. I think it's like the silent generation is like 0.5% identified as LGBTQIA. And then Gen X was, I'm gonna get these a little bit off, about 5%, moving on to millennials, which is like 10%, and then it doubles to Gen Z's, about 20% identify as part of the LGBTQIA community. And people are like, "Well, they're just getting gayer." It's like, well, I mean, possibly, or you could sort of take into consideration, it's okay to be yourself now. It's okay
Yeah,
to
I,
say,
I
"This
can't
is who
keep
I
up with
am."
the alphabet, so I prefer to say queer folk.
Okay,
Just
cool.
it's easier to remember the entire gamut.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Matthew K says, group, what are your thoughts on the Treaty of Tripoli and how it concords with the First Amendment? The Treaty of Tripoli, John Adams made a very bold statement, which should have been written in one of the founding documents. But they were negotiating a treaty with Tripoli, with North Africa. They were trying to establish trade routes where they weren't going to be facing pirates and all that, and they couldn't negotiate with Muslims because the Muslims refused to deal with Christians. And so John Adams was forced into a position to say that the United States is not, in any sense, a Christian country. So there's no reason why we can't negotiate with you. It wasn't enough to say that they were secular. He had to expressly say that that means that this is not a Christian country. That bill, he signed it. He may not have written it, but he signed it, because some of the critics will say, well, you didn't write that. Well, maybe he didn't. He had a writer, but he signed it. And it was ratified unanimously by the entirety of Congress. How often does anything get unanimous support?
Yeah.
Right? Well, welcome to the 18th century.
No filibusters there.
Yeah. And then Hans Kettering offers $9.99. Been a fan of RN forever. 12 years helped me realize that I'm not alone. The American dream died when Citizens United became law. Agreed. And it must be reversed. I'm afraid in America as a queer atheist. I get you. I'm just atheist, and I'm afraid in this country.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to go down fighting because I'm old, and it wouldn't make a lot of sense for me to run away. What else can they do to me? I've had a pretty good run. I would rather die for something I believe in than the alternative.
Yeah.
And then Adam Broughton, Adam Broughton offers $5 Californian. I'm sorry,
Oh,
that was
yeah.
Canadian.
Hell yeah.
It says, I love Aaron's mug. Also, a concerned Canadian asks, "Can your country stop exporting crazy to its neighbors?" Now, see, that's what would happen. That's what would happen if I had to flee the country and move. So, you think the Norwegians really want my happy ass?
This is our revenge for all the Canada geese. That's what I'm saying. That they call them Canada's most impolite import, the Canada goose. So that's what I'm sorry. That's what you get our crazy butts. But yeah, no, that sucks. I'm sorry.
And I'm
Apologies.
guessing that this person to have had this opinion that they probably live in Alberta, because I get where, yeah, the Texas of Canada, where there's that where all the crazy in Canada dominates. Then an avid atheist offers $9.99 and says, "Hey, I'm starting a club at my high school, atheists, agnostics, and apostles." Apostles? Atheists, agnostics, and apostles? Not apostates, apostles. Fascinating. AAA says, I seek to raise dollars and comfort for those who've been excommunicated from their places of worship. Any advice? Black heart, thanks. Did you mean to say apostles? But I mean, I get it either way. It sounds like a good idea. Matter of fact, I would like to talk to you more about that. Hit me up. Maybe we'll have a one-on-one for 20 minutes or so, and you can explain what you want. Seriously, I would like to have that conversation. And then somebody asked, "What is Citizens United?" This, if I remember correctly, this is when they decided that corporations are people, and that corporations then get to have human rights or get to vote.
They
And
have
this was a
free speech.
justification for some of the corruption where corporations get to fund vast amounts of money
Yes.
for certain politicians.
Yes. So corporations and unions have free speech rights, and their campaign contributions can't be restricted.
And somebody commented that the it might have been an auto. It said auto corrupt instead
Yeah,
of auto correct.
he clarified, Arn. It was
I
Got
it
have the
was
same
it
problem.
was apostates, and then yeah, Iconicer said
Okay.
It was
autocorrupt.
apostates. Okay, well that makes a bit more sense. I have the same problem. My wife talked me into getting an Apple phone, uh, which I'm so mad
Apologies.
at.
Right.
I hate this phone, but it does that auto corrupt thing,
It's the
and
worst.
yeah, I hate it. That's not what I meant. It and somebody I just saw somebody comment. It says, "Dear autocorrect, it's not ducking. It's never ducking."
Nobody's ever ducking late into the night. I mean, like, I can't wait to duck you. I mean, last time I checked, I've never, threatened to duck somebody, but maybe I should start.
Okay. All right. Do we have any more to talk about on our
I
descent
mean,
into idiocracy, the
God,
denial of science, the denial of reality? I'm seeing a growing thing on just denying reality in total.
yes. Yeah.
And I often say that religion is always to some degree a denial of reality. It's a denial of the reality that we don't have souls, that there is no afterlife, there is no supernatural, there's no evidence of such a thing. Praying is no more than wishing on a star, and the star can't hear you and isn't going to do anything about it if it could.
Yeah. No, I think
But people now want to pretend that they're fucking Neo,
right.
and that somehow when you die, then you get all your powers. So they're Yoda too,
Yeah. No,
or
I think
Obi-Wan, I guess, one or the other.
one of these goddamn Jedis. Yeah, I definitely think one of the biggest problems is just sort of rewriting of history and whitewashing of history that has gotten worse and worse and worse, and saying that just certain things didn't happen and refuse to acknowledge them. Then I hate to sound cliche, but we're kind of doomed to repeat it, and we already are. When we look at 1930s Germany, the burning and banning of books, where scientists being put to death, and we're seeing that here. Being a scientist during COVID was a time that a lot of people really suffered because we were told that we didn't know what the hell we were talking about. We weren't necessarily being buried alive or put to death or burned at the stake, but we were absolutely told that we were, full of shit. But the banning of books now is gotten out of control. Last year, there were an uptick. There was 3,300 around that books banned in the 2022 to 2023 school year. And so that was, I think, a 60% increase from the year before. And it's just getting worse. And, when you do that, you are basically eliminating people's opportunity to get information, so it's just a weird time too. Like, you've got the internet, that you got the World Wide Web, where you seemingly have all the information at our fingertips, yet that seems and isn't enough, right? Because you get the wrong information at your fingertips, or the one that confirms your bias, then forget it, it doesn't even matter. But when you go to a library and you can't even get access to the books that could teach you a certain history, and you can't even get access to them, I mean, that, I think, is a huge problem, a growing problem here in the States. So yeah, by ignoring and erasing history, or in rewriting it. That's the other thing. I remember there was a textbook a few years ago where they were talking about migration to the United States, or the New World from the Old World, and they called slaves immigrants. They had, a wave of people to Africa, and they called them immigrants. And luckily people caught it and were like, yo, wait about, like, yep, nope, 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 nope. Those are not immigrants. That is slavery. So, and
Yeah,
oh
we
my
had
God,
we
one
had
of
a
my,
history book in Texas that described the slaves as immigrant workers who
oh,
benefited by coming to the United States to learn Christianity.
oh my
That was
God,
a history book in
I
Texas.
hate this world sometimes. In 1983, the Diary of Anne Frank was banned for being a real downer. A real downer. I could not stop laughing, but crying at the same time. And this is why we've got a swath of, Holocaust deniers now. In fact, when I was teaching biological anthropology, I made sure, because I saw stats that a good portion of students coming out of high school right now do not know about the Holocaust, or know very little about it. Some even thinking it has been faked and it wasn't even real. I would ask my class, do you know about the Holocaust? And then I would do a little overview, because I wanted them to know, and especially because biological anthropology has a very fraught and problematic history that includes eugenics. I really wanted to explain what had happened. But again, I think moving forward, if we don't face the past, including, because when I do talk about the anti-intellectualism and mistrust of medicine or science, there are those in the United States that have a very healthy, um, disdain for the, medicine or the medical profession, and that would be maybe Black and brown women that want to give birth because they die disproportionately high compared to their white counterparts. And there also have been, the Tuskegee uh, study, and Henrietta Lacks, where Black women and Black men were treated like test subjects, and many left to die when there was options to keep them alive. So again, we've got a world where that history is being buried, and I think the best we can do is to kind of keep that out there for people to digest and make the decision for themselves. Yeah.
Denial of reality is horrible in it of itself, but the hypocrisy and the self-righteousness with which they deny reality,
Yeah.
it's sickening. Like
Yeah.
that person who was giving me the pelvic exam.
Oh,
Anything I said, it's nuh-uh. But okay, you keep nuh-uhing like that, but it will affect you too, no matter what your denials are.
and that's, I think, the scariest too, is that why does it have to affect us for us to care?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that
Yeah.
is, because I do believe in altruism at the core, that species have altruism kind of baked into us a certain degree. Humans take the cake, right? But it shouldn't have to directly affect us, or have one degree of separation for us to be like, I really think women should have safe access to, or abortion, access to safe abortions. Like, that shouldn't have to be, I have to go through that, or maybe somebody I know directly. But it really does say a lot, I think, about Americans, that it really does take that for us to kind of give a crap.
And the
I,
science
I had to
behind
end.
during COVID, all these people dying of COVID, denying to their last breath that they actually had COVID because
Yeah.
they were manipulated into believing COVID was a hoax.
Hmm.
Yeah. There's people in my family that have told me that if I just that the issue is whether they believe something, and if I tell them that it's not true, that it was true until I convince them that it was not true. So if they think that they won the Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes, then they've won it,
Yeah.
and they're just waiting for that check to come, and it's really going to come until I tell them it isn't. And if I tell them it isn't, then I've ruined it, because their conviction to how strongly they believe it was going to cause it to be real.
Yeah.
There's that's that problem. And then one of my oldest friendships recently ended because this guy only believes conspiracy theories. I mean, if it's
Wow.
something that we can prove to be true, he doesn't want to know it. But
God.
he's convinced that Bill Gates is wanted by Indian police because of this genocide that he supposedly caused, and that and my friend would not get, he turned down, he was unemployed for 2 years because he wouldn't accept a job because they wanted him to get tested for COVID,
Oh
or
my God.
they wanted him to be vaccinated, and he refused to get a vaccination. And I'm trying to reason with him. I'm trying to show him the statistics, the studies. He didn't
Yeah.
care about anything we can prove to be real. He got into it with me, saying that when I said, because he wanted to take ivermectin. I'm like, but okay, so you want something that was designed for killing parasites in livestock. That's what you think is going to be effective on a virus. And so he says, you've bought into the big conspiracy. He starts yelling at me at a dinner that I'm paying for to talk with my old friend. He's yelling at me because I bought into the big conspiracy that I think that ivermectin is a livestock dewormer. I'm like, okay, I bought into the big conspiracy, have I? Here's ivermectin.com.
Right?
Look what they say.
Google it.
Are they on their own conspiracy? And he gets mad at me for fact checking him.
Yeah.
So the people who want to believe in
hate that.
the fantasy hate fact checkers. If you can't you go to ivermectin.com. It is a livestock dewormer. I didn't buy into the big, you bought into the big conspiracy.
Yep.
Natalia was saying that yesterday, that she gets invited to Bigfoot conventions, but they get mad at her for fact checking or.
Yeah. I actually haven't been to one yet because I get it. I've gotten into enough debates that I'm like, I don't know if I want to be stuck in the same room in a remote place with a bunch of people who are angry with me as a woman. You know what I mean? Like, I hate to say it, but I that also plays. I think I'm a big dog, but then I'm 5'5" and I have to size everybody up that I meet. And I don't know. I don't think that's what I want. But yeah, facts really upset people that have staunch belief in faith in things that there is no there's nothing to back it up. Like, really get upset when you present the facts.
It feels like that because it's a part of their identity. It feels like an attack on them personally.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. Like we talked about squatchers, they call themselves squatchers. So that means
MAGA.
that, yeah, and oh God, MAGA, yeah, and
there was a time when I was a neo-pagan spiritualist. I mean, I would identify that way. That's what I was, but that doesn't mean that I can't be convinced otherwise. It took a while to do it, but I convinced myself otherwise, because I was looking for the truth of my position and I couldn't find any. It wasn't that I wanted to believe whether it's true or not. I wanted it to be true whether I believe it or not. And there was no truth to it. So when I realized that the reasons that I thought that I believed it were not well supported like I originally thought they were, I already stopped believing in it.
Right.
So when believers say, well, you can't prove it wrong, I'm going to continue to believe it till you can prove it wrong. Well, no, that's not how that works.
Yeah.
I have to know that there's a there. Show me the truth of it. What can you show about this that is actually true? The argument I had with that kid the other day, when he says, well, you say that creationists are liars. And I'm saying, I'm talking about the professional religious apologists. They definitely lie. As a matter of course, it's in the job description. They have to. He says, but you just have another opinion. So your opinion might be a lie too. Okay, let's do it this way then.
Yeah.
Go to any evolutionary scientist, look up any evolutionary scientist and show me where they any one of them ever lied, quote the lie verbatim, name the scientist, quote the lie, and show how we know that it wasn't true. And it's got to be specifically on the topic of evolution versus creationism, or promoting evolution over creation, whatever, right? Find me, quote me, any scientist ever who lied on this topic. Failing that, because you will fail that, show me any professional creationist, somebody who makes their living by promoting creationism over evolution. Name me any professional creationist who did not lie. In which case, you don't have to quote the lie verbatim. You don't have to tell what the lie is. Just give me their fucking name. I'll show you where they lied and how we know that what they said, that they knew that what they said wasn't true. Just give me the name. Show me an evolutionary scientist who lied. Can't do it. Show me a creationist who did not lie. Can't do it. If truth and lies really matter to you, you can't be a
Yeah.
creationist. Can't. But these people
And this
want to
was the
believe.
15-year-old? Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, they want to believe so
Yeah.
bad.
I,
They
it,
don't
it,
care if it's true or not. If you believe in God is wrong, I don't want to be right.
yep. No, and sometimes it really is, it comes down to a simple ignorance is bliss. You're talking about your grandpa. If it's not, what was it, sports and beer or whatever it was, that what did he
Yep.
say? That was those were his simple pleasures. Don't show me art. I'm not gay. You know what I mean? Like that, it was his comfort zone. And that is what I think is troubling, is how many people are so, their comfort zone is this, it's so small, you know what I mean? It's really itty bitty. And if you challenge it at all, it's just like, nope, you know? And I don't know, can you get inside it and spread it open a little bit? I don't know. I mean, that's the thing that I think is a challenge, or with science
My,
messaging, because that's a big part of my job, is trying to find a way to not preach to the choir. Like some of the videos I've made in the past, I've watched and I've been like, you're preaching to the choir, like you're not going to reach people. And I look at the comments and I got people mad, even though we tried, but it's tough. And some people, like we talked about, they're not, you can't, it's infallible. They're not going to shake. They're not, you can't shake their faith. It's just, it is what it is. And I will do what I can, but I'm just going to lose my mind trying. And I have too many
and
things to do that.
that's the sad thing for me, is when there's some kind of admission, whether they're aware of it or not, that it doesn't matter to them whether it's true. They're going to
Yeah.
believe it anyway. And I've often complained about this, that people have told me to my face that they don't care if it's true or not. They're going to believe it because they want to, because it makes them feel good. And
Yes.
they're angry at me for harshing their buzz. They don't want to know what the truth is. They want to make believe something else.
These
Nadia,
kind of people, um, who won't accept the truth, no matter how much you try to give it to them, they help deconvert me away from creationism. I because I accepted evolution because I was an old Earth creationist, and they were debating online creation versus evolution, and they just kept denying any fact anybody presented to them. So that made me think, am I being like that? So there are those that are never going to accept anything you say if it contradicts their favorite delusion or their favorite a priori conclusion, But there are other people who are listening too sometimes.
Yeah.
yeah.
I
And
know
my
that.
friend who refused to get a vaccination, dude, you just turned down this job, this high dollar job, when you need one so bad, and this one pays so well and has so many huge benefits. This was a fantastic fucking job. You were all excited about it until they said, we need you to be vaccinated. The fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Go
Especially
get
when,
you think they're going to put in
yeah.
microchips and track you? They don't give a fuck where you are.
Nobody wants to know where he is. No offense to your friend, but nobody wants to put 5G or whatever in his arm. Yeah, and also, I mean, like, to take into consideration, there are so many people throughout the world that would, give their arm for a vaccine, where in places in the world where they did not have access to it. And to your point about, people that kind of dig their heels in, and I don't want to harsh their mellow. When I taught, I would tell my students, because I taught at Eastern Kentucky University online, but still I would have to deal with my students who a lot of times come from very traditional conservative Christian homes. And I would
I'm
tell
just trying
them,
to imagine you living in Eastern Kentucky.
I didn't. No, don't worry. Yeah, I was it was all online. I lived in the West Village in Manhattan when I taught that class, which was hilarious, right? Like I'm like, in the Heathenville and I'm talking to Eastern Kentucky students. But I would tell them, like, look, you can believe what you want. I'm everything I think that I'm teaching you can fit it into your scheme of things if you want, but you don't have to. All I need you to know is the information, right? I think I just want you to know the facts. That's all I'm asking. I'm not trying to change your religion. I'm not trying to change your faith. Because I taught in even Lehman College in the Bronx. I had a lot of either Catholic students or Christian students as well. But and for the most part, they didn't challenge me too much. And I think that can coexist. I really do think that I know enough people in anthropology and other fields and doctors even that are religious to an extent and also practice medicine are scientists. So they've found their way to make it work and that is up to them. But I think it's a challenge, being an educator and trying to reach people. And that's my challenge always is to try to not talk down to people, find that, like, I don't know, it's almost like a battle where you're trying to find their soft spot to like get the information, right? Because in a time like COVID, that was a do or die time, right? When you've got people that are hyper individualists that are like, I don't want no COVID vaccine, but it's like this is for the greater good of people. And I had this conversation actually with a acquaintance recently who well, a good friend can't get vaccinated because she's immunocompromised. And she said that. And she said, it sucks because people think I'm an anti-vaxxer, but I'm not. I just can't. And I'm like, and that is exactly why all of us should get vaccinated to protect you. And the girl that was sitting with her, the woman said, oh, well, I'm not vaccinated, but it's not because I'm an anti-vaxxer. I just don't like it. I don't want it, which I think technically makes her an anti-vaxxer. Just because she's not saying it to others doesn't really matter. But she went on to say that she was working with an elderly woman during the height of COVID, and the elderly woman really wanted her to get vaccinated and was kind of giving her a hard time. And she's like, "Can you believe it? Like, can you believe she was giving me a hard time?" I even said to her, "Do you want my help or not?" And I just lost it. I was like, I absolutely can believe she was mad at you and wanted you to get vaccinated. You are a healthy person you could get vaccinated. You could kill her. You could kill this person, and that is where it's really frustrating. Ooh, sorry. My phone just started ringing and I've never had this is a new computer. But it just it boggles the mind that so many people were willing to, just kind of put their foot down in this sort of hyper individualist mentality of like, I don't want to do what upsets me or what could possibly uh hurt me.
That is
Mhm.
one of the ways to change somebody's mind, to connect with them personally.
Yeah.
And I think my daughter was telling me there's a study that people could recognize misinformation if they were paid to do it. Like they were better, they were more accurate at it.
Yeah.
Like I feel like their personal stakes are higher socially. They want to fit in socially, and they don't think it's that big a deal to keep denying COVID or whatever it is, Santa Claus. you know.
I had to keep explaining to people about the mask. The mask doesn't mean that you're a coward. The
No.
mask doesn't mean that you're afraid. If you're wearing a mask and I'm infected with COVID and I don't have a mask and I'm talking to you, then your chance goes from 100% down to 70%. But you're still, that's 70% likely to be infected because I'm not wearing a mask and you are.
Yeah.
But if I'm infected and you're not, and I'm the one wearing the mask, then your chance of getting infected by me drops to 30%.
Yeah.
So we wear a mask not because we're afraid, but because we're courteous. We're not trying to infect other people with a disease we may not know that yet that we have.
Absolutely.
Nobody gets that because nobody wants to be compassionate about other people. You want me to be worried about other people? What about my rights? That's the attitude that I get.
We use people's preferred pronouns just because we're being considerate.
Yep.
It's not any grand conspiracy to take away anybody's rights.
No, it's the
And
gay
it doesn't really
agenda.
hurt.
Yeah.
It doesn't really hurt me to be considerate of you.
Right?
I feel no pain. You won't either. You
It's
know?
Yeah, when that becomes, like, the worst thing you can do to be thoughtful, it's like, "Oh, wow. What a terrible person I am. I was considerate yet again. Thanks." Yeah, I work at Griffith, like I said, and it right now, it is a madhouse. I was there Tuesday and Wednesday, and it was throngs of people, so many people, and, yeah, I masked up pretty much the whole time because I don't know who I'm around because I might, especially if I'm gonna see elderly family, I don't wanna expose them later, but I also don't want to get anything from somebody else. I don't wanna give anything to somebody else. Like,
Oh
it's just
yeah,
being smart.
you can come home and brag that you went to the football game or you went to the Kid Rock concert or whatever, and that you didn't wear a mask and you didn't social distance because you don't care about all that shit.
Right?
And then half your family dies, and I mean the older ones,
Yeah.
because of you. So good on you for you standing on your lack of principles.
Yeah. I mean, who Herman Cain, like, and I was wild. I mean, like, that was in 2020 too, I think, that he got it at, was he at a Republican? Can't remember what he was at, but he was at a Republican event, and that's where he got it, and then subsequently died. I
Yeah.
mean, the people that are gonna get sick when I was teaching at Lehman,
It
a lot
was
of
at the it was the announcement for Amy Coney Barrett.
that's what it was, dear.
There was a handful of people that all got COVID at that event because they wouldn't mask up,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they're all sitting close
yeah,
together. They're all communing.
taking
This
pictures.
was at the height of the whole thing.
Yeah,
Um,
You know,
and
yeah, and
then
this is
and then Trump gets the disease and gets the vaccine, which just became available, right? And we had to take the same vaccine, by the way,
yeah,
when we eventually got COVID. Um, but people will say that Trump was the new campaign for Trump right now is to say that he was right about everything. That's his new campaign, the grassroots thing. Trump was right about everything, and I have to challenge him. Was he right about the Revolutionary War soldiers securing all of
yeah,
the airports? Was he right about the noise from windmills killing whales and causing cancer?
yeah,
Was he right about Mexico paying for the wall that never got built? Was he right about the health care plan that never materialized? But they
right.
want to say that he was right about everything. And so I challenged this one guy. I said, so what you're saying is that when Trump said that we should all get the vaccine, that he was right, we should all get the vaccine? Crickets.
Yeah,
Trump wasn't right about that, was he?
right.
Uh,
Well, and one thing to point out is who is disproportionately affected by COVID?
them.
Sorry. I can
Well,
hear the
it's mostly marginalized communities, and essential workers. So I remember when I was teaching at Lehman College, a lot of my students, I was the only white person in my class, and a lot of my students lived in multi-generational homes. A lot of them were essential workers. And one of my students had to quit her job because a lot of people weren't masking at that point. It was still early COVID, and she was terrified of bringing home COVID to her grandmother, right? But those are the people that were disproportionately affected throughout this whole time of COVID.
And
And
people in rural areas were too. So they
yeah,
were affected by it too.
yeah.
They're going to say they had a cold or the flu.
Mhm.
They had COVID, dying from COVID. No, I don't have COVID. Yes, you do.
Yeah.
No, it's just asinine.
And that's yeah, I think also explaining what vaccines are intended to do, because I think a lot of people were like, "Well, I got the vaccine and I still got it." And it's like, "Well, but was your case mild? Are you still alive?" And trying to talk about how it's not about not getting it at all, it's about decreasing the severity of the disease, right? And
Yeah,
so
that was
that's
the other
something.
thing, trying to explain to my friend that, yeah, I got the vaccine and I got COVID, and I'm over it, and I didn't have to be hospitalized, and I'm not dead,
Yeah.
right? So here's the stats. If you get the vaccine and you get sick, then you are what are the percent? I'm trying to remember what the percentages were. It was like, there was very few people. They ended up like 3% of people in that ended up can't
It's
remember.
changed through the years because
It was
now
it was a dramatic reduction
it
in
was a
whether you were
yes.
hospitalized or whether you died.
Yeah.
So virtually nobody that got the vaccine also died. And then you've always got some anecdote. Well, my daddy got it and he got the vaccine. He died the next day. Did
Was he
he already
103?
have COVID? because, oh, he did? Well, there's that.
Yeah, that or also, I mean, there's other comorbidities or things that are going on. If somebody was very elderly already, it's, there are a lot of just complicated ways of looking at it and making sure that it was not the vaccine because there's a lot of people that were
Yeah.
trying to point to it and faking illness as well, which was really infuriating. So, or those that there were people during the height of COVID that were saying that uh, ER doctors were pretending and faking it and faking all the, it was, and that was heartbreaking to me because a lot of my friends in New York were ER physicians, and also epidemiologists that had like they'd met at the CDC, they'd come to New York and they were underwater and losing their minds, holding it together with, pieces of silly string, right? And having to hold the iPhones and iPads while people said goodbye to their loved ones who couldn't visit them because it wasn't safe, and it's so to have people say that, oh no, they were faking it. I don't think they realize the cruelty of that too. I mean, there's just a level of cruelty with some of these conspiracy theories when it comes to affecting people who are on the ground, either, first responders or, actual healthcare professionals.
And let's remember that this sort of thing happens once a century or so.
Mm-hmm.
That 100 years prior, we had the Spanish flu,
Flu,
which,
which
by the
came from
way,
Kansas.
was not Spanish. We called it the Spanish flu so that we could pass on the blame to
Yeah.
someone else. You know where the Spanish flu originated?
Yes.
Kansas.
Kansas.
From a military base in Kansas was how it spread across the world because it happened to be during World War One. So we send people all over the world who are sick and they infect the rest of the planet. That's
Dick
that's how
move.
that works.
Yeah.
Dick move. Yeah.
Dick
So what that tells
dick
me is that
move.
the next time, if avian flu were to suddenly become communicable between people, or if some other similar thing that's initially highly
Swine flu.
communicable and
Yeah.
also lethal, that we're going to have this where people are so fucking myopic. They just don't want to believe the reality. They don't want to do anything out of the ordinary. They don't want to be responsible for a damn thing. They don't want to have to change what I do. Is this the way my daddy did it? It's always been the way we do it. We're going to do it this way.
Yeah.
They're not going to change anything. And it's going to cost lives unnecessarily. We're not going to be prepared for the next one either because we're just too fucking stupid.
I feel like we haven't learned anything from this one. That's what's so I mean, we've learned the people I think that have been watching that have kind of been doing the things to to do our best to survive while listening to the science, I think have learned that a lot of people haven't learned. And it's scary, There's I guess ways that we can prepare by having having a crap ton of toilet paper. That is what we've learned, right? But other than that, people just
So,
pig-headed.
so one of the things that when you're studying anything in aspects of population genetics, meaning evolution, you want to have something that has very short lifespan so that you can see many generations in turn. So when they're
Mhm.
studying certain diseases or genetic issues or whatever, they often use fruit flies.
Yep.
Slow, quick generations. Every 3 days,
Yeah.
there's another generation. Whatever, you can get studies out in a year or so that can be very conclusive on genetics. And then you have astounding scholars like Sarah Palin who make fun of scientists for studying the effects of alcohol or whatever other thing that they're trying to work on to study the effects on fruit flies. Why do we need to spend thousands of dollars to find out what fucks up a fruit fly? Because it's genetics.
Yeah.
What would fuck up a fruit fly would also fuck up us because we also are genetic. But how are you going to expect Sarah Palin to know fuck all about anything?
No, because I think that, yeah, at that point, that is just yeah, willful ignorance. There's access to it, and that's the frustration is it's not like these people are, in an area where they can't get access to science. The internet is available, but they just if it does not confirm their bias, forget it. They are just
Yeah,
going to
you brought up Ben Carson earlier, and
yeah,
yeah,
neurosurgeon.
he was a brain surgeon. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but it would seem that he got there by practicing on himself.
Yeah. Yeah. Little
Because
trepanation.
that man, he's not right.
He also was like, "Where are the fossils?" And I made a video and I, like, put all the fossils up and things like that. I mean, there's so many examples. One I actually started making a video years ago, about about finding alternative words for the word vagina because I think it was in South no, I think it was like a Michigan city council or some sort of like or maybe it was their house where they could not they ruled that you couldn't say the word vagina when talking about women's reproductive rights, and it was just like, what? Like, what is wrong with people? Like, what? You're even scared of the word? Like, get it together. Like, of course, you're not going to know the science, but it's almost like it's a kind of a feather in their cap that, like, I got this far and I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Like, seriously, like, I fooled you. And I don't know.
Gonna read a couple more gonna read a couple more comments
Okay.
here. Nadia Yvette Chambers offers $5 and says, "Fundies will take us all down with them and are trying to end the world." Yeah, you think? I mean, seriously, let's burn down all the forests. Let's use up all of the resources. Let's kill everything. Texas legislators want to allow us to absolutely rape the Gulf of everything, of all the oil, of all the shrimp, of all the fish, of all the wildlife. Let's just take everything, and on land or sea, let's exploit it all, consume it all in one generation. We don't need another generation. We don't need to have
No,
any resources
no,
left over because Jesus gonna come back now any minute. I tell you.
doesn't matter. No, it's that whole I used that was like my like little theory. I remember
I
when I was first taking oh, sorry.
I didn't finish your question. I'm
Oh, sorry,
sorry.
sorry.
Fundies will take us all down with them and are trying to end the world. Hence, James G. Watts, when the last tree is felled, Christ will come back. I'm
Oh
I'm
my
sorry to
god.
interrupt you again. I've been working
No,
on
you're
that.
fine.
I keep
You're
doing
good.
it. I apologize.
No, it's okay. Well, I didn't realize the question would no. What was my point? Oh, just this idea of when are we going to give a shit, right? Like there's this idea of, like we're all trying to get reproductive success. I think I mentioned it yesterday. Like, and reproductive success is not just us having children, it's our children having children. And before I get whataboutism, yeah, not everybody wants to have kids. I know that. But, the idea is that we get ourselves and our species into future generations. And for the longest time, climate change was kind of, you kind of push it off, push it off, push it off. But now it's like it's upon us. It is like it's right there. It's like, islands are now a dime a dozen because, or, you can buy a Groupon for 6 islands because they're not going to be there in 5 years. So now we're being so much faced with it that, you have to pay attention. That still doesn't mean that everyone's going to pay attention because, who cares? Who cares? Let's overfish. Let's do all the things that we have to do to, get ours. And to a point where it's almost like a potlatch, in the Pacific Northwest, they used to have these big giant feasts called a potlatch, which was kind of like this idea of like conspicuous feasting. Like, look, and they would have almost competitive feasts. These different indigenous groups would be like, look how big my feast is. Well, look how big my feast is. And sometimes they'd even like light fire to their feasts. Like, I've got so much feast, I don't even need it. I'm going to light it on fire. And it's this idea of conspicuous consumption in overdrive, but to a much lesser and a much more sustainable and ethical degree. But here, I feel in the US, we're just, it's that whole tragedy of the commons, which have you heard of tragedy of the commons? Okay. It's this concept of when resources aren't owned by anybody, they're going to be overexploited until they're gone, essentially. It's kind of a very simplistic idea of looking at it.
Yeah.
And, there's this idea, kind of almost like a Malthusian idea that, our population is going to grow and grow and grow until, we hit a point where we're going to use all the resources and we're kind of fucked, right? Then there was a researcher named Esther Bosserup, who was an anthropologist, said that believed in the good in humanity and that we will sort it out. We will figure it out. We will work hard to make sure others get what they need. And it's kind of like split the diff, I think, between the two right now, where there are those people that really want to make sure everybody gets theirs. It's almost like our two parties. Funny how that works. And then there's that are like, fuck y'all, I got mine. Peace out. So it's interesting to see how this is going to happen moving forward. But there are examples of like, for past, because there's that idea that the term is antiquated, and I think they're probably going to come up with a new term, but like they called it the savage noble, where they would basically look at indigenous of never doing any harm, always living in harmony with their environment. But there are
The
examples of
noble
how
savage. Yeah,
noble
I have
savage,
heard
sorry,
that.
sorry. My brain after a certain hour a few hours of live streaming, my words are like, "Bl let me catch them, catch them." Thank you. Yeah, the idea of, just sustainably exploiting your resources and being at one with the earth. But there are examples of how indigenous groups throughout the world have overexploited resources and either, rebounded or didn't, like the people of Easter Island. There are people of Mesa Verde that also, in the Southwest here in Los Angeles in the United States, cut down, so many trees, and they basically kind of deforested, and they had to kind of let it come back. In the Northeast, I don't know if it was the Iroquois. I'd have to double check, but an indigenous group overhunted the caribou, and they had to kind of let them come back over time, and it did happen. But it was just having to kind of like by trial and error figure out how to sustainably, exploit your resources so you don't exploit them till they're gone, right? And there's no coming back, right? So it is this isn't the first time we've been dealt with change, low resource availability, but this is the first time I feel like people are just like, "Yeah, I don't care. It's fine. I got mine, whatever." And yeah, it's
And then that other aspect of not wanting to share, because we've gotten that from certain libertarians. I don't want to pay my taxes. I don't want to share anything,
yeah.
anything for anybody. If you encroach upon me, I'll call the police. If my house is burning down, I'll call the fire department. But I don't want to share anything. I don't want my taxes to go to anything. How are you going to use a road?
Yeah.
My wife used to put it that if you want to be a full on libertarian and you don't want to share any damn thing, you don't want to pay for taxes for anything, you don't want to get any kind of benefit from being in a society at all, move to your own little barren little island and learn how to shit in a bucket.
Lalandra, you're the best. That's hilarious. Yeah. I actually lived on a boat for a while and did shit on a bucket, so I can just tell you from my experience, not fun
Okay,
whatsoever.
I've already told you enough that you already think I'm weird, but I was throughout the entirety of my diapers age, for the first 2 years of my life, I lived on a raft and I shit through a bucket. I was potty trained on they dug a, they bored a hole in the raft and put a rain barrel on top of it. You know how the rain barrels have those little ribs, right?
Yeah,
So they slid it down to the first rib. That's where it stops.
yeah.
And then they put a toilet seat on top of it. And I was potty trained on that so that you could look through the toilet seat and see salmon. And my problem with that was dangling my worm over these salmon. But yeah,
Oh
I
my
was raised on
god.
a raft. I had to shit through a bucket, and
Where was
when we
this?
lived, what's that?
Where was this?
We lived in Farragut Bay, Alaska.
I did not know
So it
this.
literally in the bush. My dad ran a logging company at the time, so he was a
Huh.
lumberjack, and he's okay. Uh, but what are you doing over there? Will you quit breaking shit? They have my snake hook. Hold on. Dogs. They got to grab everything and chew everything up. Anyway, yeah. So we lived on a raft and we lived out in the bush, and we didn't see other people for months at a time. We had to go grocery shopping by taking a seaplane. There would be a little bush plane that would pick us up. And I remember flying, sitting in my mother's lap in a Cessna 150 as we go over all these islands till we landed in Petersburg. And then we would do our grocery shopping, a month of grocery shopping in advance, and then we would fly back in a Grumman Goose, which is a flying boat that lands on its belly.
Oh,
And so
wow.
we would bring the month's worth of groceries back that way. And then there we are, isolated, no people around for another month or so until it's a harsh winter. And we spent 7 months completely isolated because even the seaplanes couldn't get to us.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so that was awful.
That's a
But I mean, I
what?
remember moments out of this. I was very young, but I have fleeting memories of this, and we have pictures of it as well. And
Yeah.
I remember my dad living in that situation, and then he comes to visit me in Dallas a decade or so ago, just before he died, and we're driving around in Dallas in the cities, the city freeways and everything. And my dad makes this brilliant observation where he says, "There's way too damn many people on this planet."
Oh my god. Well, I mean, he's not wrong.
Yeah,
But
because when we were up there were 3 billion people in the world.
right?
There's 8 now.
So I'm watching that show I told you, The Strain. It came out in 2015. It said there are 7 billion people, and I was like, "Oh my god, that was not even 10 years ago, and then we have a billion more." That's why I think it's so funny. It cracks me up that people are getting, again, a lot of these incels or these Jordan Peterson. I watched a clip with Jordan Peterson recently where they were talking about the decline of women having babies by like 30, and he's like, there's a decline in women having. I'm like, we have 8 like, get out of here. Like, why does it matter that some of us are choosing to or not have children? Like, what? We are okay.
Yeah, I
The
I have
earth
to
is fine. There's a
throw
lot of
this in.
us.
I have to throw this in a comment. Hans Kettering offers $1.99 and says, "Can we please address climate change, our future?" When
um
you've got 8 billion people on the planet, you have to be extremely efficient in food production
mhm.
and energy production.
Yeah.
And we're not
No.
efficient in either of these.
No.
And the Americans are unfortunately the worst offenders and
Yep.
the most offended
Oh
at the
yeah.
option, or at the idea that we should try to conserve at all.
And also
I go to
police
other
others.
countries and I see how they conserve. I went to Ireland and I'm like, why is there a power switch on the light socket? We just have the light socket on all the time. You plug something in, it doesn't work. You have to flip a light switch to make the light socket
Yeah.
work. Ours, all our light sockets are just always on. I go to Australia, they have this rain thing that retracts or saves all the rainwater.
Yeah.
And so they can run a soaker hose only because they retain all their rainwater off this thing on the gutters around the house. So it gathers all the rain, and so now they can run the soaker for their yard. I'm like, wow, that's how you do that. We just run it off the city water. We just run our soakers all the time. We just run everything all the time because it's infinite power, it's infinite resources. We don't care. That's why we consume more than everybody else in the world. If you want to be a
Yep.
proud American, be a producer.
Yeah. Right.
Don't be a consumer. We've been trained that we need to consume, consume,
Consume.
consume, and we don't
Mm-hmm.
produce shit. That's why
No.
everything is made in Japan or made in Taiwan or made hecko in Mexico. It's all made somewhere else because other people produce,
Well,
and
that's
we are the pigs who
yeah.
consume.
That's why the Chinese created climate change to increase their production and keep ours nice and low. That's why. You know that, right? God, I hate people. It's so freaking frustrating. Oh, one thing I did want to just bring up too about
Okay.
anti-intellectualism is a big pseudoscience thing that comes up, especially in archaeology, is any sort of monumental architecture. One of my least favorite shows out there is Ancient Aliens. I think it's fascinating from a psychological standpoint, but just this idea that anytime somebody comes across, monumental architecture done by non-white people, it must have been aliens. We don't know how it was built. I mentioned Rapa Nui or Easter Island earlier, and people, it must have been aliens. It's like, no, they figured it out, and they were brilliant geniuses figuring out how to move those giant moai, just like the pyramids. It doesn't have to be aliens, and it's pretty darn racist if you think about it. If you give yourself a chance to kind of go, wait a minute, hold up, you know, why do they always say it's aliens if it's not a bunch of white dudes doing the manufacturing or the building? So
Yeah. And I always thought it was important. I say this as a cisgendered white male, right? So I'm white. I'm not ashamed of being white, but neither am I proud of the accident of being white.
I get it.
Right, isn't it? Yeah, but I mean, but I think that it's important to teach what this country has done and is doing to other demographics. I think it's important that we teach, and I saw a series of 8 hour long series of documentaries on what the United States has done to the Japanese, the Chinese, the Jews, the Irish, the Catholics, indigenous peoples, women, and I forget what the last one was, but there was like all these things that the United States did, legislation that was levied and enforced against all these demographics of people in the United States after the Civil War, the first century after the Civil War. Did I say blacks? I guess I must not have said blacks. That of course would have been the other demographic. It's stunning to see what the United States, what our legislators, the people in government, have done to their own people. And you mentioned a couple of these things, like the scientific experiments of actually
Oh my God.
deliberately spreading syphilis
Yeah.
among black males, for
And
example. I
then
mean,
not giving them penicillin
we did
when it was prevented.
horrific shit. But there are people now who want to teach American exceptionalism, and they want to teach the myth, the lie, that America never did anything wrong, because they want children to believe, even if they know that it's not true themselves, they still want to teach children to believe that America is in this privileged position because of a covenant with God. And
Yeah.
so America has to follow God's edicts or whatever, and the reason we're in such a good position is because we have this covenant with God. And so if you teach embarrassing little missteps, like interning the Japanese, like the law in California that prohibited hiring a Chinaman, there was a law passed in California that you cannot hire a Chinese immigrant, and that's how it's phrased, you Chinaman. That
Yeah.
how do, how can anything be so obviously anti-constitutional
Yeah.
and still get passed? 200 legislatures in California passed this without realizing how wrong that is.
Yeah.
Right, but it happens all over the country, and shit like this has happened. Do you know 100 years ago, this was a shitty place to live. This whole country was a shitty place to live because we didn't have weekends off. We didn't have federal housing regulations. We didn't have food regulations. We didn't have obligatory schooling. We didn't have truancy. We didn't have child labor laws. We didn't have any of these leftist policies
Pretty
that made America a pretty okay place to be. What was the
safe.
greatest thing?
Pretty
I'm not
nice.
saying that America was ever great, but that the greatest thing about America was that once upon a time, we had the highest standard of living. And that is what American politics now is trying to deprive us of.
Yeah.
They want to go back to the third world model. And I realize how inappropriate it is to say the third world model, but this is the analogy they usually give, where there's a shit ton of poor people who are just abjectly poor and a handful of super rich.
Yeah.
They don't want there to be a middle class.
No.
And we were the country where most people got to live in that comfortable weekend barbecues, one income family. We had that beautiful standard of living once upon a time where basically everybody could be happy. And we so fucked that up.
And yeah, I'm trying to every day kind of understand how do we get how do we rectify that? I mean, I know that for me, I mean, this is a little bit more personal, but like I live with my partner in, a one-bedroom apartment in Los Angeles for, I think around $1,800. They're raising it yet again. This is the third raise this year, and I have to now fight it. You know what I mean? And it's like we're two people I have a master's degree, he has a bachelor's degree, just struggling to get by. And I'm just one anecdote of so many in this country of people that are working multiple jobs and cannot pay the bills. And yeah, the disparity of wealth has grown and grown and grown. There is no middle class. And
Yeah.
that's why it's funny when you hear folks kind of lamenting that if the millennials, I'm not a millennial, I'm a older or a younger Gen X person, but if the millennials just stop buying so much avocado toast they could afford a house. It's like, no, that's not how that works. The housing market has increased
Mm.
exponentially, and basically salaries have not. So I mean, that right there there's no way we can afford a home like our parents or grandparents could. So
Yeah,
it's
somebody in the chat just called me a fake.
oh yeah, he's
Yeah.
been whining and crying. I think it was the Jordan Peterson talk that got his panties in a bunch. Sorry.
Aw, yeah.
Well, like
Come have a talk with me. I'll show you how real I
that's
am.
what he wants, though. He wants.
He wants it.
He said literally that he wants to humiliate you.
Good fucking luck.
Everybody has their kinks, man. You know.
I guess.
The shit that I've done for fun. You couldn't possibly humiliate me. The most you could conceptually do is prove me wrong about a point, but based on the other comments that this person has made, he can't do that either. So bring it, asshole. You know
I
I'll put
think
you on one, and I'm not going to be humiliated. You definitely will, by your own fucking words. But enough
he
of
goes by
dealing with
Peach.
the idiots in the chat, the obvious trolls.
Yeah, I mean anybody going by Peach is really not that intimidating.
I
You know what I
wasn't giving
mean?
him the
Like,
I wasn't giving him the credit of naming his name.
and by the way, I see your comment. Who was it? It was I killed Earl. I'm really sorry. She said if or I don't know if, what your gender is, but if my rent goes up again next year, I won't be able to live here. It's infuriating. It's gross. Like that's another thing is just landlords. And oh, by the way, my landlord told me, literally told me a few months ago, the reason why he keeps raising our rent in this apartment complex is because we are in Burbank. Burbank doesn't have the COVID moratorium that LA County has on rents. So he can raise rent here. He cannot raise it on his LA properties. So that is why he's doing it, is because he can't fuck the other people. So he's just fucking us even more. And luckily though, I have become friends with the mayor of Burbank. I don't know if he can do anything, but I know he's trying to roll back the rent increases in Burbank because so many landlords have done that because of the lack of protections here. And it's just gross, you know. I mean, again, it's and I understand that, you know, maybe my landlord is hurting, but nah, it's a company. They're fine. They're okay, you know.
I heard some noise behind me, and so I had to take a look at what the bully dogs were doing to make all that noise. And
Oh
they
my
both look
god.
at me. They both look at me like they've been caught at something. Like they're like two teenage kids you just caught in the back room,
They're
and they're like,
so cute.
"What?
Oh my
We're not doing nothing."
god. I love them
Oh.
so much. Look at him
That's
just
what
cleaning his ears.
that's what they do all day is kiss each other.
This is
Those two dogs love the fuck out of each other. It's the weirdest thing. I
Borgnine
mean,
and Odin, right?
Hmm.
yeah,
I want to know
we
your
brought
dogs.
Odin home. He was a rescue. I was my wife found this dog that was going to be put down the next day. We know that there's a shit ton of dogs that are going to be put down tomorrow at any given time. If you have
Yeah.
room in your life for a dog, go to the fucking pound. You will come
Yeah.
home with a dog or you're not human. Yeah, you don't get to claim how moral you are if you go to the pound and come back without a dog.
Usually a
But she
six pack
finds
of
this thing.
schnauzer.
She finds this thing that it was, I swear, when we found it, it was a walking skeleton with one eye. And they hadn't surgically removed the eye. The eye was just infected. So when we find this dog, he was in pathetic shape. He'd been in the pound for a week. Nobody picked him up. We don't know what his background was. His attitude, however, was fantastic. He was so happy to get a visitor. He was delighted to see us. We're like, okay, you sold me. We're taking the dog. And he's put on a bunch of pounds in the short time that we've had him. So he's no longer a walking skeleton. And as soon as he comes in and the boxer sees him, the boxer just fell in love with the bulldog like right away, and they just became fast friends. I mean, you can see
Oh
they
my
make out all
god. I
this
just
never ends.
The boxer's a year old, so he's got puppy boxer energy, and
oh my
I
god.
think the bulldog is maybe 5 or 6, so middle aged. And by the end of the day, the boxer cannot stay awake. He's like nodding off because the bulldog just keeps him busy all day playing, and
Oh my god.
It's just funny to watch these two hideous dogs French kiss each other all
They
day.
really are like mouth. I saw that in the
Yeah.
background. Like they like I could almost see his tongue like entering the ear. It was like a full on ear coning. Oh my god.
They do.
They are making out. Like get a room, guys. Dear Lord.
Indeed. And
Yeah.
they're both male, so
I mean, look,
that happens.
I like to say 1,500 species have been documenting engaging in homosexual behavior, yet only one species has been documented engaging in homophobic behavior, and that species ironically belongs to the genus Homo. So, yeah. There's
There's
a
a
lot of
certain
gay.
irony in that.
There really is, and yeah, and if I mean, I feel like if dick sniffing was an Olympic sport, dogs would be taking home gold every time. They love to just sniff, and also dragging genitals across couch cushions. They're just like really good at that. Male dogs. My dog, although Raisin, I feel like because she's got little tail, she's a big. Her butthole touches everything in the house. I'm surprised I don't have pink eye more often. Honestly, it's true. She spends so much time like every time I get up, she's on my pillow, like butthole first, and I'm like, well, there goes my week. I think I'm just immune.
All right. So I've run
Wow.
out of comments to read,
Oh my
and
gosh,
I
yeah.
don't know if we've exhausted this topic because we live in America. We can't exhaust
I
this
know.
topic.
I spent all morning and last night working on notes, like, because I had so much stuff, but I think a lot of it is, like things that more preaching to the choir. There's
Yeah.
just so much to talk about. But yeah, I'm
We've
sure.
been at this almost 3 hours.
Dear Lord.
3 hours. And we're gonna have to bring it to an end at some
Yes.
point. And we've had between 400 and 500 people watching
Wow. That's
this whole time.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, one thing I
So
do want to say too, just because I think it's important, is that when I teach, one of the coolest things that I discovered, as I was learning anthropology, is that there are so many people that scientists and naturalists that were talking about the theory of evolution before Charles Darwin even touched on it. So maybe eventually I'll come up with like a little playlist of different scientists to check out, or maybe I probably should just do a video about all the other shoulders of giants he was standing on, who were not white European men, which I also like to point out. So I think that's something important to mention, because I think a lot of anti-intellectuals, those that are lean towards the more bigoted side, like to think that, uh, white supremacy. Bleh. Yeah, we want to, kill that.
I'm gonna have to. I forgot to put this in, and I sincerely apologize to you.
Oh,
I
it's okay.
forgot to put in the links for your Patreon
Oh, thanks.
in the description of this. Once we end this, I will again put in your Patreon links, and if you want to support Natalia Reagan, uh, kind of a broad-based category of what she does, doing science communication through comedy. The only time I've ever seen that done before was Bill Nye. So good on you for finding that avenue.
Thank you. It's a weird one. There's a few of us out there. It's growing, but yeah. And if any of you are in Los Angeles, I do stand-up comedy shows. I also do shows in New York, and I'll be trying to do more touring next year. I have a podcast coming out called Science for Social Change, talking to scientists about their work and how it's changing the world for the better. And I will be doing more live streaming. And if you are interested in coming to Madagascar, I am hosting a trip there next May. I'd love you to come. It's May 29th through June 6th. We'll be seeing lots of leaping lemurs, colorful chameleons, wacky insects. So yeah, please check out
Now, we are
that.
talking
And
about May 2024.
yes, oh yeah, 2024 coming on
5
up.
months from now.
5
Okay.
months from now, it's gonna be a lot of fun. It's actually everyone's told me like this is a really decent amount of money, like or like a good price. It's not like a $5,000 thing. I think it's $2,675 right now. So, and that's 9 days of lemur extravaganza. So it'll be fun. And I'm a primatologist, so you're gonna learn a lot about lemurs. Who is that? Odin?
Okay.
Or is
Hold
that
on. No, this is
oh
Borg 9.
Borgnine?
Who's,
Hi Borgnine.
hey,
Hi
come here.
buddy.
Come here. Come up here.
Hi
Come up
Muffin.
here. Oh,
Oh
and
my,
there's Odin too,
oh my God.
because you
Hi,
can't get one
Odin.
without the other now.
Oh my God. Look at
They're
these
buddies.
smush face dogs.
They're best
They are
buddies.
such a pair. Look at that.
I love them. Look at them. You guys live
Don't
with
eat
these
the parrot
creatures?
perch.
Don't eat the perch. Yeah, don't do that.
I
Don't.
have
Oh, look.
a tree right next to me
Oh,
that my parrot sits on,
is this what the snake
and
was trying to get to yesterday?
the snake was on. Yeah, the snake had gone up the parrot perch, and then stretched all the way out to the parrot cage, which is over there, which is a good 3 foot away, and he's only 5 foot long. So I was impressed that he made that. But then I realized he's going to eat my parrot.
Yeah, I told my boyfriend about that. I was like, yeah, and then his snake tried to eat his parrot. It was crazy. It was real wild. We
Got a
looked.
couple more comments to read. Let me jump on those.
Sure.
The Kagi says, Aaron, were you disappointed to hear a prominent atheist use King David to justify his narrative, even though most historians say he never existed outside biblical studies? I don't know of any prominent atheist who used King David to justify his narrative, nor do I know what the narrative is. I don't have a problem with there having been a King David. We just don't have evidence of a King David. That's the only thing. I would expect that when you have enough legends, there probably was a King David. That doesn't mean the David versus Goliath thing was necessarily true. I suspect it probably was not. Like much of the Bible is not true. But it's folklore, and there's usually a root to those stories. There's even a root to the Tower of Babel, as ridiculous as that story is, and it does not cast God in a good light at all. The Tower of Babel story does not. God is literally saying, look at how these people got together, and when they join together, they can do any fucking thing. I need to stop that shit and remove their power by fucking up their languages so that they can't communicate with each other. That means that God is weak, hateful, and stupid. That God is threatened by people. Because when we work together, we can do anything.
Yeah.
That's God admitting that. That's the funny thing about the Tower of Babel. There's a grain of truth to that story, and that is that Hammurabi, around 1750 BC, began a tower that he wasn't able to complete. And that Nebuchadnezzar tried to begin or restate the construction, just try to take over and build it up. He wasn't able to complete it either, because the technology at the time. But that's the basis of that story. The Tower of Babel was the I forget which ziggurat it is. Marduk ziggurat, I think it was. But anyway, doesn't matter. Nadia Yvette Chambers offers $2 and says, overpopulation is to run out the well of souls. There's 8 billion of us. When there were 7 billion of us, it was stated that more people are alive now than have ever lived in history entirely.
It's freaking crazy.
Kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
If you look at all of history and then just compare that to the population. So the Well of Souls ran out in 1982. And coincidentally, there were gingers really before then, so don't go there. Sorry, I am at the mercy of these fucking dogs.
Oh my God, that's okay. I was just taking a moment to read the comments. So that's yeah, thank you. Sorry for the quiet, guys. I just was like, I'm just taking in all your chats.
Okay.
I was reading everybody saying goodbye. This is kind of where me and Aaron are complementary as a partnership. He will talk and talk and talk, but 3 hours, 3 hours. Yeah. I'm an introvert. Yeah, my battery is dead. And
yeah.
They'll have meet and greets where they invite people to meet Aaron for dinner at a bar or something, and we'll be the last people there. He's the guest of honor, and we're sitting here, and everybody else has gone home.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that
She just
too.
can't stop talking to people and telling stories. Yeah, that's how my wife is. Can't stop soaking up the attention.
Talking my ear off, Lalandra. Can't get a word in edgewise. No, but when you do talk, it is very profound, and I love it.
Yeah, she
It's
does
been
have
fun.
that about her.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, I got a couple more
Welcome.
comments. Well, one more comment. This is James Guy Photography offers 50 Mexican pesos with no message. Thank you very much for that. Natalia, do please send me any links that you want
Yeah,
as quickly as you can after the show so that I can edit and include them in the description
sure.
of this recording. Thank you for bringing this up. I want everybody to know she wanted to talk about Bigfoot. We did that yesterday. She wanted to talk about idiocracy, our descent into or our cultural tendency to anti-intellectualism. We did that for 3 hours today. She has a couple of probably less controversial topics that she wants to.
Also, I take requests too. I mean, as a biological anthropologist, if you have anything that you would want me to prepare, I mean, if you are open to your uh, watchers, listeners to sending in requests, I'm down for that as well.
Yeah, I'm already seeing that we need a part 3 with Natalia. So she has a couple of more topics that she wants to bring up, and we're going to be doing those uh, next week, next month, next year.
Oh yeah, see you next year.
Yeah.
So fun to say that.
Indeed. All
I'm
right.
seeing a lot of people saying that I don't hear a lot of people saying anymore that 2024 is going to be my year because it's just been one crappy year after another.
It is bad.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
I don't like to give value to years, but this is the first year I've been like, this has been a shit year and I want it to end. But I don't know
Well,
what to start.
2024 is going to be an election year between
Oh
Trump and Biden. So
no,
how fucking brilliant will that be?
no! Oh my God, our election they drag out for a whole year, and it's like no, I can't imagine if we lived in a state that was up for grabs, being bombarded by commercials.
Oh, right? Oh, that's got to be rough. I mean, I'm next to Arizona. I don't know. They're weird. I don't they surprise me sometimes, but I don't know.
Good luck
Yeah.
to us all.
Yeah, good
All right.
luck. Yeah, well, happy New Year.
Happy New
And
Year.
thank you.
See you next year.
See you next year. Bye.